Center for Digital Economic Policy Research. We're a think tank focused on digital transformation. With great sense and privilege, I welcome the distinguished panelists and delegates present here at the roundtable. The Center for Digital Economic Policy Research is an independent think tank that analyzes public policy issues of the digital economy and advocates for policies that are fair, reasonable, discriminatory, and enabling. Today's roundtable discussion on the topic Asset Monetization for Accelerating India's Growth is yet another endeavor of C-DEP to bring an extremely important and contemporary policy issue into the limelight. Asset monetization has assumed a pivotal role in acceleration of economic growth of the country. Asset management is yet a challenging task given the enormity of the assets that the asset owners possess and the huge complexities in their monetization. And thereby, on the other hand, digitalization can bring phenomenal change in the management of assets and their monetization and thereby contribute to accelerated economic growth. This being the principal theme of today's roundtable, the distinguished panelists will add substantial intellectual value to the understanding of asset monetization and evolve a roadmap for the policymakers. I once again welcome everyone that are present here today to the roundtable discussion. May I request Dr. Mitra, our Principal Advisor of C-DEP, to introduce our panelists for today's discussion.
Thank you, Sergeant Sir, for giving the most pride and coveted assignment of the day. Thank you very much. So with a great sense of pride and privilege, I will just briefly mention about the distinguished panelists who are present here. Thank you, everybody, first of all. The roundtable will be moderated by Dr. Jajit Bhattacharya. Dr. Jajit Bhattacharya is a renowned policy and technology expert across the industry and the government. He is a BTech from IIT Kanpur, went down to IIM Calcutta to achieve his master's in management and later obtained PhD from Computer Science and Engineering of IIT Delhi. His basic expertise lies in visualizing technology as it could be applicable to the common people, to the society at large. Thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya. Thank you for being with us. You will be moderating the entire roundtable. Then coming to the panelists, I would like to start with academia. Dr. S.G. Deshmukh is currently the professor of mechanical department of IIT Delhi. A BTech, MTech and PhD all from IIT Mumbai. He is known in the industry and academia as quality guru. He is a renowned expert in the supply chain management. I'm very grateful to you, sir, for your presence. Right. Now, I do not know whether Professor Vignesh has been able to make it. Anyway, he's on the way. But let me also introduce in absence here. Dr. Vignesh is a professor in the Department of Management Studies of IIT Delhi only. His expertise lies in information system. He is a PhD from IIT Kanpur and also a bachelor from Madras University in Physics, and later he did sociology in master's as well. Then I have from the government, lots of luminaries from the government institution we do have today in the roundtable. Mr. Rajat Kumar Saini is a member of Indian Administrative Service, right? Currently is heading in ICTC, one of the organizations spearheading seamless integration of the logistics in the country. Most welcome, Mr. Saini. He is a BTech from IIT Delhi only. But for him is a kind of homecoming too. Thank you very much for being with us. Right, and then we have Mr. G.V.L. Satyakumar. Mr. Satyakumar is a member of a coveted Indian Railway Traffic Services. He is currently heading CRIS, the information system of the railways, and spearheading a number of innovative projects in the railway for asset monetization. Before taking over the charge, he was holding the post of Divisional Railway Manager of Mumbai. Most welcome, Mr. Kumar, and thank you very much for your time. Then we have Manish. Manish Chadda is the Joint Secretary, Department of Commerce. He is an alumnus of FMS New Delhi. He is one of the few distinguished professionals outside who have made lateral entry into the civil services. So in a way, he is also a pioneer of this kind of generation that we are seeing in the civil service. Thank you, Manish, and most welcome here. Then we have Vikas Chandra. Vikas Chandra is the project lead of the Smart City Project Management. Vikas happens to be an expert in the urban transportation. He is an architecture guy and also has a master's from the Institute of Foreign Trade. Now he is, what should I say, championing the smart city projects of the government of India. Because despite your very busy schedule, thanks for being with us. Thank you very much. Then we have Mr. Subbaraju. Mr. Subbaraju was so kind when I approached him that we have a, and probably despite all his busy and engagement, he really accepted our invitation to be here. We are very grateful to you, Mr. Subbaraju. He's a noted expertise. He is now heading the public-private partnership of the Airport Authority of India, and we are expecting a lot of insight from you. Thank you very much and most welcome to today's roundtable, Mr. Pai. Right, we have Anurag Jain. As I told you that I have a galaxy of the panelists over here, so you have to bear with me for a moment time. Mr. Anurag Jain is the Chief Investment Officer of NHI Invest. NHI Invest is an outfit created by NHIA in order to optimize the asset monetizations and their management. Most welcome to the roundtable and thank you very much for your presence. Indeed. Then I have with me Shiva Kumar Natarajan. Shiva is the Chief Digital Officer of Indian Postal Payment Bank. Right. My greatest thanks to you. He has outstanding past record in the various digitalization and integration into many organizations. Thank you. Thank you very much, Shiva. Dr. Sandeep Chatterjee is listen, you have come, but while you were sitting there, you have an allocated seat also there. Dr. Sandeep Chatterjee is currently the Chief Coordinator of the Cyber Laws, Cyber Coordination of the MAIT. And Dr. Chatterjee has outstanding work on some aspect of the asset monetization, particularly in electronic waste. Thank you very much, Mr. Chatterjee. Despite all your business with G20, you have made it possible to represent here. We are very thankful to you. Then Mr. P.K. Roy is the Director of Port. He is also there. He is handling very, very outstanding infrastructural issues in the Ministry of Port and Waterways. Thank you very much for being with us. Greatly. And last but not least, indeed, we have a very young bureaucrat with us, Mr. Jitendra Singh Pandya, who is the Director of Asset Management of the DOT. In 2012 batch of civil service, he belongs to Post and Telegraph Account Services. He is currently managing the assets of the DOT. Thank you very much, Mr. Pandya, for being with us this morning. With this, I end up and thank all of the panelists for their time. I would like now to call upon Ruben Banerjee, our Director, to just introduce the theme of the particular, because he is the architect of doing this particular research. Thank you.
Very good morning, and again a very warm welcome to all of you from C-DEP. I will keep myself very, very brief here, and I will not stand in the way. I was just, the way I was telling Professor Deshmukh outside, given the exceptionally high density of knowledge and expertise that we have in this room, I don't think I really need to talk much. But then the subject of the roundtable discussion is very, very important. You are all aware why we are here. We are very keen to listen to all of you because the report that we have done is only a draft report. So it will be updated, refined and fine-tuned with all your valuable suggestions. So we are very keen to listen, and the final report should reflect your voices and views. So we are very keen on that. And I would request our C-DEP President, Dr. Bhattacharya, to quickly take you through and give you a snapshot of what our draft report talks about. And then we can open the floor and we can discuss further. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruben, and thank you all the delegates who have taken out time to be here with us today. We are really grateful for your time today. So what we have gathered here for is an issue that many of you are already down the path. Many of you might be thinking about it, or many of you believe that it's an important issue that needs to be looked at. Essentially, the challenge that we're facing is that there is a substantial information velocity when we are going down the path of asset monetization. And many of you are deeply involved in that journey. Professor Vignesh, please. You've just started.
Yeah.
So what we have gathered here is to find out how digitalization of this entire asset monetization process can help recover a larger value from this process than what we are doing already. And so we'll do a deep dive in terms of what are the challenges and therefore what are the possible solutions that digitalization can come out with. Some of the clicker is not working, so Pankaj, if you can go to the next slide. I think I'm too far from the laptop.
Should I ask him to stand by here to operate?
Yeah, that'll be good.
That'll be good.
Yeah, it's working now. It's working now.
Sure.
So we had Akanksha giving a little background of what C-DEP does and what do we focus on. Essentially, we are an independent think tank and we focus on digital transformation. We have been instrumental in coining the terms such as digital colonization, technological sovereignty. It's been over 17, 18 years that we have been trying to push these concepts, bring in the understanding, both with the civilian government and the military and the intelligence. And I would suppose that after a decade and a half journey, these have become kind of household terms in terms of policy making. So that's what we essentially do. We understand what's happening globally. We understand how technology is being used as a tool to have a trade regime which is disadvantageous to economies such as India. And therefore, what are the things that we would need to do to using technology for India's own progress. One of the catchphrases we could continue to say is that India did not become rich in the 16th, 17th century by selling vegetables to Europe. We became rich selling technology and technology-based goods and services, wood, steel, zinc, high-quality bronze, brass, textile, high-quality textile. These are all technological outcomes. And with repeated regulations by the then colonial masters, such as stopping Indian ships from operating, and we can go to the details of it, they're actually passing laws which were, we can term them as the British Atmanirbhar, because they wanted to be Atmanirbhar on their ships and not on Indian ships. And so we saw how technology played a critical role in changing the balance of trade. And from being about 23-24% of global GDP, which are anyway rough estimates because data wasn't really available in those days, but the estimate is we were 23-24% of the GDP of the global GDP, and we got reduced to 1-1.5%. And we're now climbing back slowly. We are back to around 3-4%, and I'm sure there'll be a faster growth that will happen. But essentially, the core of all of this is technology. Otherwise, everybody has got access to Mother Earth and everything that grows from Mother Earth. The differentiator is technology. So we come back to asset monetization, and we're all aware of it, but just to bring this conversation to the same page, infrastructure is linked to growth and economic performance. So monetizing assets enable governments to unlock greater economic value and access valuable funds. Now, we have all been part of this conversation that, oh, the private sector charged 2,000 crores for this, and the government could do it in 1,200 crores. The reason is because the risk involved in the project when the government takes it up is significantly lower than the risk involved when the private sector takes it up. The cost of creating an infrastructure is lower for the government because there is a lower risk involved. And hence it makes a lot of sense for an emerging economy like India that the infrastructure is continued to be developed by the government, because there are a large number of issues involved in infrastructure development, starting from land acquisition, which the private sector is just not tuned to do. They don't have the capability and the abilities to do that. And therefore, it makes a lot of sense for government to go ahead and create that asset. Once that asset is created, then should the government continue to run it? Well, as we all know, the mantra of the government is minimum government, maximum governance. And if you follow that mantra, it's been stated in multiple ways for last 2,000-3,000 years, starting from Chanakya and so on and so forth. Government should be focused on the business of governance and not in making toothpaste and so on and so forth. And therefore, once the assets are ready, it makes a lot of sense for the government to actually pass it on to the private sector and get a substantial return on the taxpayer money. And then what does the government do with it? The government then promptly puts it back into the next set of infrastructure, because capital is scarce in this country. And which is what asset recycling is all about. This is something that we are all aware of. And that leads to better infrastructure, it leads to the virtuous cycle of better jobs, better livelihoods, easier transportation, lower cost of supply chain, and so on and so forth. So it's a win-win situation for everybody. If you look at the first set of national highways that were being built from 2000 onwards, we saw that led to a growth for the rest of the decade, because enormous amount of steel got consumed, enormous amount of construction material got consumed. So not only was there a direct contribution to the economy because of consumption of these goods and material, but also it led to opening up of areas which were hitherto not reachable, and therefore you could have a better supply chain. So fact of the matter is that India is a large land body, and we still seem to be scarce of land. We still seem to be having no land for factories to be set up. We struggle to have 200 acres of contiguous land, and there have been investments. In fact, Manish and I were former colleagues, and we have struggled to get land for industries who would try to set up those industries, large companies who could not find contiguous land. And that's because it's not that land is not available, it's because the roads are not available. Roads are not available to reach out to those lands. And therefore, we need the capital to keep creating these roads, open up, decongest our cities, create new cities. All of that is infrastructure. Now, when we go down that path, that obviously is, as I mentioned, a highly high information velocity path that we're talking about. So there are two ways to monetize. One is outright partial sale or strategic sale of asset through auction or private sector or through stock market. And the second is leasing asset to a third party. And therefore, there's been continuous clarifications coming in that we're not selling off these roads. These are 30-year leases, which is getting missed out. Now, the challenge that such a leasing puts to the government is that this asset is still owned by the government. So does the government know what is the status of this asset 15 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, when the asset is going to come back? Or are we going to get an asset back which is completely finished off, and therefore there's actually a value destruction that's happening rather than value creation? And so how do we keep track of these assets? Again, it's not that the government is not doing anything, it is, significant steps are being taken. We're just having all of those being put together on the same table and see how we can keep track of these assets. Let me put some challenges that the government has gone through, has analyzed, and came out with answers to those challenges. If we give out a road in terms of a 30-year lease, and let's say it's a 4-lane road, what happens when you need another 2 lanes on that road 10 years from now? Because traffic will go up, and so you need another 2 lanes. Who builds it? Is it the concessionaire who builds it, or is it the government who builds it? If the concessionaire builds it, then it will also have an impact on the middle lane, because while the construction is going on for the 3rd lane, the traffic can't go on the middle lane, which means there's a hit on the revenues. Who takes care of the revenue loss? And once the concessionaire has invested into these 2 lanes and taken a hit, does it get any return from the government when it returns the entire asset back? Or are those 2 lanes owned by the concessionaire, only the middle 4 lanes are owned by the government? So in every single asset that we go through in this path, there are significant amount of challenges. And each of these challenges is essentially linked to information about that asset. So if we move forward, there is asset owners' perspective in terms of challenges, lack of core understanding of market demand and ways to monetize assets, complex process involving varied stakeholders with different interests, poor data management often leading to delays, cost overruns and poor project outcomes. So both in terms of when the project is getting conceptualized and when the project has been handed over and when you take the project back, in all those 3 stages, there is a lack of information that happens, or limited information that is available, which leads to the challenges of managing those assets. And therefore, ability to know the status of the asset at the end of the lease period becomes a challenge. Ensuring that the value protection of taxpayer assets at the end of the lease period becomes an issue. There have been cases where the government has actually leased out, in this particular case, the example I can think of is a hotel. It was leased out for about 8 crores. And the view that came out was that if you had sold the land separately, that itself was about 38-39 crores. So the government has actually incurred a loss. Now what happened in the next 6 to 7 years was the GST collection itself was over 900 crores from that property. Now is that a loss or is that a gain? Would it have been better to sell it at 38 crores, or was the government right in selling it at 8-9 crores and then getting the value from GST and other mechanisms? And don't forget the jobs that got created out of it, right? So where is the information that enables the government to put this argument forward, that here is a total value unlocking that the government has done? And that's where we believe that we need to have digitalization of the assets. And therefore creating a digital thread, creating an integrated and connected platform, adopting a digital framework for efficient management and utilization of asset related data. Easily accessible data can optimize operations, help in making informed decisions, and facilitate in managing assets that have to be monetized for its entire life cycle. So the need for adopting digital solutions come from the fact that India set an ambitious target of 1.67 trillion rupees, which is lakh crores, for asset monetization for 2024-25. It's a tall order. It's a very challenging order. How do we increase the velocity of assets going through this process? And there are, Ministry of Commerce, DEPM, and so on and so forth, who have done an excellent job at that. And there's a message from DIPAM on what they're doing on this aspect. I'll read it out. Unfortunately, the gentleman couldn't come in. That's Dr. Shailendra Kumar, and he was unable to join in because he has got another commitment with G20 that just popped up. So the government can build assets at lower risk and therefore at lower cost, and the achievements are getting challenged. Only 53% of asset monetization targets were fulfilled in 22-23, so there clearly is a need for greater support for the government's initiatives, and technology enablement can help reap the full potential of its assets. So with that, we complete the introduction to the report, the draft report that all of you have with you, and you would have got it on mail. There is a summary of what the report says. The idea is to bring the collective experience and knowledge base of all the delegates here today to see in which direction we should move forward given these challenges, and how digitalization of assets would help us in unlocking greater value for the government. I'll take a pause here and go around the table and see if you have any views. and then we will have 4 different topics to discuss related to this issue, and we'll take your views, record them, and based on your feedback, we'll complete this report and present it. So with that, I'll request Mr. Saini to start with your views if you have any comments. Sir.
On the report particularly?
On the whole issue, on the general issue, and then we'll come back to the report in particular.
So, thank you so much first of all for inviting me, and a very good morning to all the esteemed panelists and organizers. But I went through the report last night only. So one thing that clearly came out is, if we put in a phrase, it's we want to monetization. I would also like to think of it as, while planning itself, we are putting in systems to reduce to bring information symmetry at a later stage. I would also like to see it as a tool for planning. Generally, in Indian governments, where at whatever levels I have worked, asset monetization apart from federal level is much less of a concern. In the districts, it's not a concern at all. We just get money, spend it in whatever way in different schemes and all. At the state level, yes, it forms part of DPRs, but it is not, again, not much of a concern, because generally state level infrastructure projects are funded either through public exchequer or through loan, and that servicing of loan is also generally through public exchequer. And coming from state like Telangana, where we are making huge projects like Kaleshwaram, I don't know, many of you might have heard, around 1 lakh crore irrigation project. Many other drinking water projects, lake rejuvenation projects are $5 billion, $6 billion projects. So monetization, as far as policy makers are concerned, is generally a field which is very well developed at the federal level. Now, there was an example of asset monetization, how it has been used in the report also. Nagpur Metro Rail, I can give the example. There are various ways in which we are doing. One is outright land auction. We are doing, many state governments are doing, and then central government does it lesser. So, which is just discovering the price. In fact, if let's say in a counterfactual where that land price had been tracked since in some systems, so by the time government would decide to auction the land, maybe it would have received a better price, or it could enable the private players to come up with better plans for that land. As of now, what is land auction? Just we put out a particular parcel of land and private players give their bid, and we see that it's a reasonable kind of auction, a fair and reasonable process, and we auction it. Maybe if the systems that you have proposed in your report, if those kind of systems could be there for a very, very raw asset like land, very raw asset, maybe things could be better. If I have time, I can give 1 or 2 more examples also, like, or should we come back to that?
But I understand that you need to leave early, so maybe if we can have all your feedback now, and then, you know, and
So I'll give you one more example, again from the city of Hyderabad. You might have seen Outer Ring Road, which is I think one of its kind. Now no other metro is still hosts of that kind of road, more than 150 kilometers, 6 or 8 lanes. It was a JICA supported project, and it entails not just the road but 1 kilometer industrial corridor, which we call Hyderabad Growth Corridor, like HGCA. So there again we monetized the asset, but the linkage was not that great. What we did, we just divided the whole road into multiple packages, just bid it out to concessionaires, and then they constructed the road, and then government is providing kind of annuity, again through public exchequer. So the way we would like to, I think the way you have envisaged asset monetization, where there is I think what all of us are talking is least amount or least involvement of public exchequer, so that directly an asset is monetized, government gets the fair price, and the money, the tax revenues that are getting are not majorly consumed in this particular process. In Outer Ring Road, we are doing that. In the present project that I am handling, it is more in line with what you are proposing in these roads. So in NICDC, which was earlier called Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, we are basically, the introduction was that we are into reducing logistic cost. Yes, we are into reducing logistic cost, but majorly we are into building cities. We are into building greenfield cities where the cost of doing business, the gestation period is minimum. These are greenfield, ultra-modern cities. Obviously, it's a difficult task. We are supposed to build more than 20-30 cities. Already 4 are built, 4 more are under construction. Very less talked about in media, but these are greenfield cities with ultra-modern everything, every facility is there. Slowly social infrastructure will develop, slowly investment is trickling in. One city is near to Professor Deshmukh's native place, near Aurangabad. One small part is in Noida, one is in Gujarat, and 4 more, so at different places of India. So the why we are developing in those particular locations, because the logistic costs are seeming to minimum. Now linking to this particular topic of today, the idea is that governments would invest as of now, and then the monetization would come in, so that government, the first order effect would be that government would reap the benefit of this at some later stage, and there would obviously be second order effects of employment, development over these cities would also be like a development growth, like growth centers and all. So again, the way digitalization has helped us in monetization in these cities, though it is still at our early stage. In most of the places we are still at phase 1. The quality of our asset is totally available to the person who wants to buy, who wants to pay. And because the information from day one is available in a digital form, it helps us in monetizing our assets in a much better manner. So this is almost, I can say, a direct implication of what you are proposing in your report. Same is for, you might have heard IACC Dwarka, India International Cadet Government is building. I think very soon it is going to be to nation. There also the seed money initially government has given, and there is a whole lot of land which is going to be monetized very soon. And government is building the apart from the convention center, the trunk infrastructure, making connectivity better, and all those elements and information again in digital form, I hope is going to fetch government the best price that is available. So just to summarize, digitalization would not just help us in asset monetization. I think digitalization, from the day we are conceptualizing or planning the asset, from that day onwards, if we are using this and providing this information at some conserving the storing the information, making it seamlessly integrated, and providing it at a later stage to our concessionaire or whoever XYZ is there, whoever is the stakeholder, will help government fetching better value for the asset. And I don't, you did use the word digital twin, but I really like the term digital twin that you have used in the report. I think that's all from my side.
No, I thank you so much, and I think that was very, very insightful.
If you allow me, I will stay for some more time.
So I would really like you to be here and listen to others, and therefore then it'll trigger some more thoughts, and we'll look forward to listening to that. Right? If we just switch off the microphone, there's a feedback happening. Great, thank you, and I agree with you. Digital twin is a very interesting concept. It's a challenging concept to execute, but if you can do that, there is a lot of value that will come out of it. So with that, I'll move to Mr. Satya Kumar, who's the MD for CRES. Mr. Kumar, over to you and your views as an opening remark.
I think I'd like to take this in 2 parts. One is digitalization for asset monetization. but the topic is actually about asset monetization to accelerate India's growth. First, coming to the later half, asset monetization to accelerate India's growth. As far as railways is concerned, I mean, this is something which railway has been doing it for many years. I mean, in different forms, and but the fundamental principle was that the ownership of the asset always remained with the railways. I mean, just to quote a few examples on railways, assets can be classified as fixed infrastructure and rolling infrastructure. Fixed infrastructure is mostly about the land, the buildings, the track, the traction, as well as the signaling asset, whereas the rolling infrastructure is on the coaches, wagons, as well as the locomotives. And for the purpose of building railway lines, I think you know that there are already a number of PPP models which have been in vogue for the last 3 decades. And many of them are highly successful. For example, we have this Pipavav Rail Corporation, which started with an existing railway asset being actually going on a PPP mode, and it's a very it's one of the classic models wherein a railway line of around 60-70 kilometers was built, and later a lot of learning was taken from that and was extended to other models which even came out with a non-governmental railway where the land can be owned over large stretches by a private operator, and then you can build the infrastructure and there is a revenue share with us. And this also extended in different forms to the rolling infrastructure as well. We have schemes like the Onio wagon scheme, whereas now you've heard of a factory which was set up by General Electric, where we have around 1,000 locomotives contract over a period of 10 years with 100 locomotives coming out every year. They are successful models. But coming to digitization of assets, I mean, this also railway is highly evolved. In fact, let me tell you that as we stand today, 1986, when we started a digitization of the railways, we started with the passenger reservation system. But today I can confidently state that there is almost no activity in the railway which doesn't get into a database. As the train keeps running, the train, its assets, its own composition as well as time, distance, everything gets into a database along with all the infrastructure and its maintenance as well. And but let me tell you the real value where probably in the current era where digitalization we could leverage compared to what it was maybe around 15-20 years back is leveraging across cross-functional departments. For example, when we want to lay a railway line, we need to take clearances from the forest department, we need to take clearances for line crossings, for power line crossings, for water supplies, for utility shifting. So I think this is where we find the digitization of the assets would actually can crash project timelines from by even a tenth of what it is currently. I think, and this again, I think government is at it in terms of getting a nodal agency called BISAC, Bhaskaracharya Institute for for advanced governance in these systems, where they're collating the information across various departments, getting the assets, and we're already seeing some benefits in actually skipping some stages in the estimate stage itself, where we need not get into you can probably almost get into the detailed estimate, and where EPCs can actually be made to work really well. And digital twin, which was raised, I think we are currently doing a project with a professor in IIT Kanpur, wherein because as you know, railway infrastructure, I mean, there is a lot of areas where it's almost 65,000 route kilometers, of which there's a lot of areas where there's congestion, and how to simulate the congestion in particular areas. We have taken one of the most complex areas in Voltaire, where we have concentrated industrial activity of 2 ports, or a steel plant, a fertilizer, you name it. I think there is almost every industry in that, NTPC of 2000 megawatt, and within a spread of around 30-40 kilometers of a linear stretch. But the entire density of the railway lines is around 300-400 kilometers in that linear stretch of 30. One of the most heavily congested sections, and we are trying to simulate the entire process because all our locomotives are now fitted with the real-time information system and satellite communication. And with the ISRO, we are on this for the last 2 years, and we are hopeful that digital and digitalization of assets would definitely take us to the next level, not only in efficiencies but also in terms of project execution. And I think this conference is really apt at this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So I have a quick question. You talked about Own Your Wagon initiative. In that, is the wagon completely owned by the private sector, or is it eventually transferred to the government, to the railways?
No, I think it is owned by the private sector, but it is built to the specifications of the railways. And railways gives, a concession on the floor. So it's a separate model.
And have you been able to crack the issue of finding the costing for the tracks, and therefore what is the costing that the private sector has to pay?
Yeah, the track access charges. In fact, the dedicated freight corridor, when it was envisaged, it was envisaged on the model of the infrastructure will be owned by the DFC or the dedicated freight corridor corporation, and the trains would run. As the trains run, they pay something called the track access charge. I think just now the DFC is getting off almost. I think both the corridors are completed, and this regime would be in place shortly. I think there have been a number of reports by Deloitte themselves, who have been in agency for working out how this track access charges need to be calculated, and it's going to be the way forward as far as DFC is concerned.
Right. No, thank you. It reminds me of a saying from Sri Aurobindo, that the hand that sends us the Jupiter spinning through heavens spends as much cunning to fashion a curl. So every single project that we see has got so much of detail that just solving the little curl takes so much of time and effort and energies. And I think that's where digital starts playing a role, that it helps in reducing the effort involved in solving some of these issues. So be it roads.
Crashes everything. Crashes space, digitalization crashes space, time, efficiency, project timelines,
Absolutely.
everything. We believe it changes everything.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Satyakumar. So we'll move to Mr. Manish Chadda, who is the Joint Secretary, Ministry of Finance. Manish.
Thank you, Dr. Jaydeep, for inviting me here. So I would start by saying that asset monetization is a given. We all know that. But digitization, using technology to enable asset monetization, which is one of the core issues that we are deliberating today, is that a given? So some of the esteemed panelists before me, they have talked about this. They've given some examples. Mr. Satyakumar also mentioned about it can help crash the project timelines, improve quality, etc. So, but he also said hopeful of how much digitization can achieve. So I thought it would be good that while we all know maybe some good examples, fast track we all know, but I thought I'll start with talking about a few not so well known examples where digitization has really helped in asset monetization. And so I have 3 examples from India, one from abroad. I thought I'll read out about that and then we can get into a detailed discussion on those areas, especially because I have a background around technology. So the first one I'll talk about is the Affordable Rental Housing Complex scheme of the Government of India. This is for providing rental housing options to urban migrants. This ARHC is a subscheme under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, and it provides affordable housing to economically weaker sections closer to their workplace. The initiative generally works by identification of beneficiaries, which is again a digital process, where even local governments are involved. They identify the beneficiaries who need this affordable housing. Technology is used to create online platforms or mobile applications where beneficiaries can register for the affordable rental housing units. The digital registration process has ensured transparency, reduced paperwork, and makes it easier for individuals to access the scheme. It has helped also in another aspect, which is the conversion of vacant government-funded housing. Underutilized or vacant housing, both in the central and the state sectors, are identified for conversion into ARHC. These are also repurposed to provide rental accommodation as against an outright sale. Technology like geospatial mapping and geographical information systems, GIS, has been used for identifying suitable locations for ARHC projects. Because you have to bear in mind that the projects will only take off, they will monetize, so to say, they will go on rent if they are at a suitable location close to the work location of the economically weaker section. So tools have considered factors such as proximity to employment centers, transportation networks, social amenities. Implementing agencies have then been identified who have retrofitted existing buildings and made them affordable rental housing complexes. So one key benefit has been, yes, the rent is made very much affordable for the economically weaker section, for the target beneficiaries. Though the rent amount can vary based on specific location and other factors, but it is generally lower than the market rates. Subsidies and incentives have been provided to make the project financially viable, including tax incentives and other forms of support. Maintenance and management of these units lies with the implementing agencies. They ensure that the housing units are well maintained, utilities are provided, and basic amenities are available to make the stay very social, and so that they also get a good experience from these units. Duration of stay is predetermined, it is fixed. The system also helps in getting the allottees fix up the duration upfront. The social and community infrastructure, as I just mentioned, that is also inbuilt under this scheme. Schools, community centers, healthcare facilities, and then the monitoring and evaluation. So this is one area where digitization has helped in setting up such a scheme. Another example that I found out was under the National Land Monetization Corporation, the NLMC. This is a fully owned firm under the Government of India, under the administrative jurisdiction of the Ministry of Finance. It is an SPV to carry out monetization of government and surplus land holdings of PSUs. It is envisaged to be a single point of information for the surplus land or unused buildings available for lease from CPSEs. It will help in valuation of property, market research, investment banking, land management, legal diligence, and other related skills. And recently it has taken over 2 assets, land assets of BSNL for monetizations. They are also using a variety of technology to achieve their goals. One is geospatial technology to map and analyze land assets, identify potential development sites, and assess the value of the land. Data analytics to collect and analyze data on land assets, market trends, and the demand for that land. And then PropTech, property technology, is used to automate and streamline the asset monetization process. This includes tasks such as valuation, marketing, and documentation. And then blockchain. So they are also using blockchain to create a secure and transparent record of land transactions. This will help reduce fraud and corruption. They are also developing their own proprietary technology to support asset monetization activities. These technologies include a land valuation tool, a land marketing platform, a land transaction management system. So the benefits are quite obvious, but I'll just read out quickly. Increased efficiency, increased transparency, increased access to capital, increased investments, including foreign investments in asset monetization projects. Another example that I would like to cite is from the Central Warehousing Corporation. They have implemented cloud-based applications of all warehouses of the corporation to managing all activities of the warehouse. And the same has been duly integrated with their internal ERP, the e-invoicing, financial accounting, and banking solutions. So operations along with the financial systems have been integrated. Through the warehousing management solutions, CWC provides real-time availability of warehouses across the country, including tariff rates, space availability, and list of facilities. They have phase 1, which is a warehouse aggregation portal, which provides a one-stop digital solution for providing on-demand warehousing spaces for all kinds of businesses, including government and private, and depositors, including e-commerce companies. And then they have a whole history of digitization. They earlier used barcode systems, and then a warehouse management system, a cloud computing system, big data analytics system, and now currently they're using AI to automate tasks and improve decision making. So these were some of the examples that I felt that prove the case that digitization is useful in asset monetization. One example from Australia, wherein the Victoria state, it has used the land title registry concession was provided out to a third party to do the monetization. They have used a lot of technology, and it has also allowed the technology used by them to levy fees for the property ownership registrations for 40 years, and the government plans to use those proceeds on schools, hospitals, and further development, including transport projects. Now, while we see the upsides, one downside that has come out, especially as we know in developed economies, data privacy is a key issue. So people there, the citizens of Victoria State, they were concerned that, and they had fears that their data would be under the monopolistic control of a private entity. How do we address such concerns? India, once we go forward, Sir also mentioned about value destruction Jaydeep also mentioned that. So while maybe there might not be value destruction on the physical asset itself, I feel, but with technology, with data being the new oil, so to say, there could be value, I should say, transfer from maybe the government to a private entity using data, which we might not really immediately realize. So maybe we can discuss more about that once we proceed. These are my initial thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manish. Very, very insightful. All the three areas that you mentioned. I think some of these things we have not even thought through properly. So this is very, very good insight. And also, I think if you look at the fact that in terms of warehousing, we have previously passed regulations which allowed the warehouse receipt to become a bill of exchange. Then with the warehousing aggregation, it becomes a very, very powerful tool because you can see the BOE online then, and then use it to get lending and financing against those receipts. So it's a very forward-looking step that I think. Thank you so much, Manish. With that, I'll move to Sri Vikas Chandra, who's been deeply working with MOUD on smart cities and making very, very significant contributions. And is in the middle of all that's happening in smart cities. So, Mr. Chandra, over to you to your views on the matter.
Sir, thank you, and thank you, Dr. Mitra, for giving me this opportunity to meet such esteemed people. Sir, I have only 4-5 points. I will be very, very brief and crisp, probably candid as well. We in Smart Cities have developed as a mission around 240 projects with PPP. They value around 15,000 crores. They give us some insights when I was reading it. These projects which have been developed are multi-sectoral and new and unique concepts. The first insight which I'm willing to share is that how do we define asset? Is asset only land? Probably not. It is also water, it is also air. What I basically mean by this point is, we have often misunderstood that asset is always only land. To give you an example of starting with air, Bhopal, they wanted to develop smart poles, and those are poles which have cameras and environmental sensors, and they wanted to do that on PPP. And all they allowed the concessionaire was the right to use the medium to lay the optical fibers. And just because they gave this right, they were able to get a good private participation. And that fellow, the concessionaire selected, he developed the entire smart poles in that city. And that right of way was kind of important. Another small thing, since a lot of projects have happened in smart cities, we are being suggested by the standard political process to publicize this. So we thought where to do it. We thought the airport. So we called the airport advertising guy. I think he there from times ago, and they had 5-6 airports. And we asked him, okay, what are the rates? And he said that, sir, these are the airports with us. And right from the time you enter to the time till you board, we have these panels, and for 15-second slots happening in a loop, we'll charge you 3 crore rupees. Now these advertisement rights, I think, are they not assets? If somebody or a private person can think who owns just the airport, the government actually owns the entire city. Can you think differently? Ahmedabad Smart City, they developed about 14 advertisement locations, and with that, sir, they are getting around 12 crore rupees every year, and that is only 10. Can that be 5,000? Surely be. So air is also an asset. I can give an example of water. Sholapur, 15 kilometers or 13 kilometers towards west, you have NTPC, and they are on the Deccan. Water is a scarce resource, and NTPC and the city both get water from the lake. And that water, the city said, please, we are devoid with drinking water. Please give this clean water to us. We will treat the water, the waste water, and give it back to you. Can you use that? They said, okay, fine, but we don't want to invest anything in that. But they have done it, and they're laying down a kind of pipeline, exchange the clean water for the green water. Is that an asset? Surely it is. What to talk of Sholapur? Why should I not give an example of Ghaziabad? Ghaziabad, if they treat their water and supply it to the Shaibabad industrial area, the people are willing to pay for it. In fact, they were able to raise a municipal bond about this, and they got the money from the people. So, as on date, our ministry, Urban Development Ministry, encourages the cities to raise bonds, and about 13 cities have raised bonds, and that also about water infrastructure, which is an essential infrastructure. Essentially, if I'm willing to give you money for your essential infrastructure, the day when you come with a commercial infrastructure, probably there will be much better response. A city like Baroda, when they want to do water supply project, and they get 10 times oversubscribed, what does that indicate? At 7.15% coupon rate, that indicates that there is a market. Please think over. So water is an asset. So water, air, they are also asset. So in this report, if we can enhance the definition of an asset, I think that would be a good point. That was one. Second, my originations are from a village, and in our village, when a road would be developed, the prices of the land abutting the road would increase. Now, that is a very common thing to happen. But what I basically want to say is, why should asset monetization not be integrated with value capture finance? Why should we think about us asset alone? Why not that entire, for example, many cities are developing the riverfront. They're investing 500 crores, 1,000 crores, 3,000 crores towards that part. If Sabarmati riverfront is developed for money, they have been wise enough to think about creating a real estate land which should be kind of cross-subsidizing that. So there has to be a larger overview to asset monetization. And if I can say so, monetization is an art. It needs creativity. It requires a freedom to fail that should be allowed. You will try experiment things, you will be successful in two, you will fail in 8. Please do not get the CAG audits to kind of question you for details. So that is one learning which I feel that this report should include, that asset monetization is not only about the assets, but that it should be integrated with value capture finance funds, transport, we know TODs, we know everything. So those kind of things should be put in. In fact, but a small case study which I wish to highlight here is, we in Smart Cities, you know, sir, that we tried with an area-based development approach. Area-based development approach, sir, is that if this entire table was a city, and it has got 60 wards or 90 wards, we don't have enough money to develop the entire park. We'll select 4 or 5 wards, put our entire effort there, and see what happens. That idea was to basically have a demonstrative effect in the change in quality of life. But I look at from the finance angle. So I tried as one simple research we tried to do in 10 cities. The idea was that if I had invested 1,000 crore of rupees in 4 particular wards, how has that impacted the real estate of that place? How it has impacted the residential prices, the commercial prices, both rental and sale, and over a period since we started the effort. And that we did not only in one city, but we did it across 10 cities. And the result we got was very interesting. Even though we had COVID of 2 years, we found that since we had invested 1,000 crores plus from government in those selected wards, the real estate and commercial prices, either they became comparatively much more than the other parts of the city, or despite the COVID, they were a bit more resilient and the prices stood stable. There was a learning. I think if the government puts in money, and since they put in the money, that entire area benefited. If we have a larger thought process than only looking at the site, looking at the larger area, I think there is a learning for us. So that was my third input, sir. I think this report should also have case studies. Please permit me, I'm an insider. It tends to be a little boring when it's theoretical. When we have in this room people from different ministries, they're all government people. If we add in small examples, I think it will become a better, interesting read. And since it is in the draft stage, sir, it is possible maybe to add that. Even the panelists here, if they can give maybe 4 or 5 examples each, it will become even more interesting and enriching. So that was my last point, sir. Also, one thing, sir. Asset monetization, we worked as a firm, and there was a empanelment done. They were very wise that they kind of listed down the agencies to work with. They defined the rates so that the cost discovery is not an issue. It was sent to all the chief secretaries, all the states. But 2 small examples of how difficult the challenges are. For example, we all know that in an urban area, which is a municipal area, the land beyond the urban area is a development, urban development area. And beyond that, we have the district area or the Jila Panchayat area. We found that the Jila Panchayat institution, they own beautiful land assets inside the municipal boundary and very, very prime lands, which they have been giving for rent for some petty sum for years. So in India, land as an asset is owned by multiple different departments, and it has been a challenge, sir. We have tried our all to the point. The state, central government's directions was received well by the state. They issued, please do it. But those people, those Jila Panchayat people who own land, or even railways, or maybe different departments who own lands in the country, they hardly have capacity at the ground level. And plus, there is a resistance. There is a resistance because you call this an asset. Do I want to lease out my asset? No. I want to hold it. I want to stop everyone who wants to, who get a kind of a work out there. So these are some of a few points, sir. Further more than this.
Brilliant insights, very, very deep insights, very helpful. Let me just summarize it very quickly. The fundamental question of what is asset, I think, needs to be deeply looked at. Let me give a quick example of NDMC area where I personally was involved, where we actually converted the toilets and renamed them as hygiene centers. So you go to NDMC area, you will see the new toilets, which were supposed to be quote unquote smart toilets. So when we designed it and it came out, they asked, where is the Wi-Fi? There was no Wi-Fi in it. There was no sensor in it. There was nothing in it. So what was smart about it was that there was not a penny being spent by NDMC, and you had the toilet, which was better than the 5-star hotels. You could go there and give you a blood test on the next room. You could go and buy ice creams. You could go and withdraw cash, and the government did not invest a penny into it and was actually making money out of it. Very similar to what you mentioned, Mr. Chandra. I think it's a very fundamental question. And what we basically did was we took social engineering and technical engineering and combined it and created a design-led toilet. What it essentially did was ensure that women are safe, because you got doors on the backside then it's very unsafe for the homes. We don't realize it. We made sure the doors are facing the road and made sure it's extremely lighted. And then we got a bank to fund it. And then we got the bank to put its own ATM and pay a rent to pay its EMI. So that was the financial engineering that we did. Now the point was that the municipality does not have the capability to oversee so many toilets. At 9 in the night, at 12 in the night, how do you know what's going on? Is the drugs being peddled? All kinds of unsocial activities happening. So you would not go into a toilet and give your blood test and buy flowers and buy ice cream if it's dirty and misused and so on and so forth. So we created a social engineering where each of these stakeholders fought with each other in situ to make sure that the toilet is clean and it's not being used for any other activities. You can go to the NDMC area. I would strongly encourage you, go and check. The first one was next to the Constitution Club, where all of this was put in. And we also wanted to have a cafeteria on the first floor. Now, unfortunately, under DOAC, that is not allowed in the NDMC. You can't have a first floor on the 300 square feet area that was given. So I'm just amplifying what you said. I think a brilliant point we must think through. In fact, we also did an initiative with Government of Andhra Pradesh on non-tax revenue generation, where even the digital asset of the Chief Minister talking and walking around, we're thinking of monetizing it. Because that is also an asset. When he gives a speech, people go and click on Twitter and whatever else. We wanted to go ahead and monetize it. So very, very important point. I think the second point you mentioned was case studies, very well taken. We'll also come back to you for some case studies from yourself and from everybody else. We'll really, really appreciate that. And lastly, you talked about the land ownership. You would have all heard of these stories. In fact, when we were redoing the Varanasi, the papers for the ghats were in Farsi. In Karnataka, you can't manage land records unless you learn a dead language called Tulu, because those land records, because we have got deed-based, land ownership. We don't have title-based land ownership. We are slowly changing to title-based. So unless you got all the deeds in place, you don't own the land, and the deeds go back into Farsi, into Tulu, and some of the older languages, which all pose a challenge towards asset monetization and to digitalization, because you can't do OCR on any of these documents. It has to be the way it is. It's like a picture. So it keeps coming back to the point that it's the details that matter, and every single area that we look at is extremely complex. And as Mr. Sivakumar said, the moment you put digitalization, the complexity reduces. So thank you so much, Mr. Chandra, for your views. We move to Mr. P.K. Roy. We look forward to your opening remarks, Mr. Roy. And I also understand that you need to leave within an hour, so we'll be mindful of that.
Thank you very much. So I'll speak in the context of the Ministry of Port, Shipping and Waterways, and particularly the major ports. We have a every asset in the major port is controlled by the autonomous major ports, which are actually owned by the government. So the outsourcing or PPP projects or the concessions are not a very difficult task. And as far as the digitization part is concerned, all assets are properly digitized, and they are not only kept with the Ports Authority, but also shared with the Ministry of Urban Affairs, who also maintain the land records of all the assets on digital basis. So that part is taken care of in the major ports particularly. But there are certain issues. Asset monetization actually has two aspects. One is the asset owned by the owner or the Port Authority or the government, and the second part is the concessionaire. So what means, during my 4 or 5 years experience, what I have seen is that there are certain challenges when everything goes through RFQ, RFPs, all details are available to the prospective bidders. But the problem is that because we are functioning in a limited area, limited sphere, so the competition is too much there, and then there is a possibility of aggressive bidding. Aggressive bidding ultimately leads to failure of projects on PPP mode. And then another problem is with the asset owner, that there is a concession agreement, there is a provision of dispute resolution mechanism. Normally, when the concessionaire feels that the asset is not going to give the return they were expecting, they find out excuses to abandon the project and claim the compensation payment. That is a burden on the government. Arbitration, litigation cost, and the compensation payment of cost. And ultimately, what happens that when the project fails, you have to go in the bidding again. And the credibility of the process is at stake at that time. So that needs to be taken care of. Diligence by both, not only the owner, but the bidders also has to be taken care of. I think this report is not taking care of that aspect, which is very important. Because the idea of the PPP is the government does not have these many funds. That is why the private investment, the added advantage is the technology, which directly affects the efficiency in the operations, then the logistic costs. So these things have to be taken care well in this report, then only it will become meaningful. This is what I feel. And another thing is that the handing over of the asset after a period of concession gets over. So naturally means you, and we all know that when you are leasing out or you are giving some asset on means concession for a particular activity, there is a life to it, and during that life that money is recovered. So ultimately the fundamental thinking is that if I as an owner get back my asset, means after earning the money by both the concessionaire as well as revenue sharing to the port authority or to the government, the asset comes back to the government or the owner, and then again it is open to the same process of rebidding and making money, and then at that time with the contemporary values. So these are certain challenges which I think are not taken care of properly while conceptualizing a project.
So I think very useful inputs, and I think this whole issue about dispute management, I think that's important. Again, as you rightly said, digitalization will play a key role in ensuring that disputes are minimized. But as we all know how vendors behave, they'll find out new and interesting ways to raise disputes. I think that's a very strong point that you mentioned.
Yes.
We'll make sure that's incorporated into the report.
Thank you.
So I've got one more question, is that ports have been involved with port-based development. In fact, in Mumbai there was a large project to have a city around the port.
So
I'm just wondering what happened.
that has not been, taken off as yet, because there is some policy issue on the township management within the port, the land owned by the port authority. So that still is under consideration, but I think it will take time, because already there are the properties outside the port limits owned by the port authorities are having a huge number of litigation because of the encroachments, etc.
Right. Great, thank you so
So
much.
it is a very big challenge for the government.
Thank you. With that, we'll move to Sri Sivakumar Natarajan. I'll say your views, and you've been deeply involved with the Indian Post Payment Bank, and that's been a spectacular journey in spite of all the challenges. So we look forward to your views on digitalization of asset monetization.
Thank you, Dr. Sir. Thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya. And greetings to the panel. And looking at the degree of the panel, there are people from roads, railways, shipping, and I'm sure we're going to get from the airport. So I can say these are the bahubalis of the infrastructure. I may represent a small baby in that comparison. And thanks to Vikas to give a slightly different definition or expanding the definition of an asset. So I think what I'll be talking about is unlocking, or where we are trying to unlock value from an asset that is probably visible to us but not a physical asset, and that is, I'm referring to the human asset. So in terms of that, I think the India Post Payments Bank, which was conceived by the Department of Post, was actually aimed at trying to unlock the potential of the vast network of the Department of Post, which existed in the country for almost 150 years, which were doing the regular postal services and also small savings. But I think through this institution that the Honorable PM also had the vision of doing it, and he mentioned it in his 2014 Independence Day speech, wherein through digitalization and how the potential of the vast network of India Post was used to render financial services and also government services to across the country, to the last mile, as we say. Now, somewhere the asset monetization should have a benefit to the people of this country, and I think this is one classic case study where an existing infrastructure, an existing publicly available service was taken, was enhanced further, and technology played a very vital role in this, because without that, doing things at scale would have been a challenge. One of the key things that we did in this was actually to do it as efficiently as possible. One of the things was to actually use the existing BPI that is already available in the country, the digital public infrastructure, in terms of the Aadhaar stack. We had an interoperable payment system that was already there. So riding or building on top of it and creating the customer value proposition on top of it really helped. So through this, the India Post Payments Bank with Department of Postal Network was able to actually take services to the remotest part of the country. Today, I think the Department of Post is able to service almost 5.5 lakh villages out of the 6 lakh villages we have in the country. And somewhere in the process, we have been able to create what I would call a meaningful financial inclusion. I mean, not just for the value of the word, but the fact that in times of crisis, services could be taken to the customers. And I will quote the tough times that we went through COVID. The post was also treated as one of the critical utilities, and all the postmen, I'm really proud to say, worked full time during that time. Some of them even gave up their lives in doing it, wherein critical values, and I'm sure you have seen horror stories of people standing in front of ATMs to deliver cash, to withdraw cash, and our postmen, by leveraging the technology as well as the interoperable ecosystem, we were able to deliver cash to the remotest part of where really people need that few hundred rupees of cash. So that's something which was quite significant, and the fact that this was done by the government, and this is just to say, this is a greenfield bank actually, and it's been quite some time since I think probably a few years when a bank was created from scratch. So that's something which is very significant and shows that with the right intent you could create something, and there was not much of private participation. This was completely managed by the government, and that, I think, to the point that Dr. Bhattacharya, which you mentioned, some of those things came up here, like how while the bank was allowed to independently create itself and move forward, there was governance, as you said, minimum government, maximum government. There was governance from the government side, from the department side, to make sure that the objectives are getting achieved. At the same time, there was significant value creation and unlocking this potential of this asset, the more than 3 lakh postmen, and as they are called, Gramin Dak Sevaks. They are actually serving the country, and that potential could get unlocked through this simple, creation. And this has now found quite a bit of resonance across the world also. And while in some of the other countries, the postal banks have got privatized, and I hope we may not do it here, like in Deutsche Post or Japan Post had that. I think China Post did it. So we have also become a good case study. Happy to say that in the recent visit by the Director General of Universal Postal Union, specifically they came forward, they wanted to understand how the India Post Payments Bank journey has happened, and they wanted to take it as a case study. And immediately after that, we got a chance, in fact on Independence Day, we were presenting to the Asia Pacific Postal Union on how our journey is there, and some of the smaller countries, maybe our relevance could apply to the smaller countries where they want to do like Vietnam, Philippines, etc. They also want to adopt certain things that is similar. So that is something which is, that the human potential that we have, and as you said, Dr. Bhattacharya, where we have a lot of land, we also have a lot of people. And I think one classic case is the IT industry has used this to a great extent, the labor arbitrage, and has been successful and brought in quite a bit of foreign currency to the country. Similarly, I think this would be a good case where the human asset has been taken to another level. It has also created a good, I would say, some kind of enrichment, and that has to be value for everybody, for the nation as well as for the individual. Today, a postman or a dakia is also proud in a different way that now they have become kind of a banker. We treat them as a banker, and not the potent type banker, but a person who is on the street and is able to give you the same service that you would get when you walk into a bank branch. So I think that has kind of a self-esteem of these people have actually grown up. And today we are seeing engineers who are applying for the Gramin Dak Sevak post, although it requires only a 12th pass. In fact, I've seen cases where people who have studied engineering and they work and then they want to come, because now they're saying that there is an element of technology that is coming into this whole ecosystem. So I think that is something significant. And just to add a little another point with the context of the report and everything, I think you captured it well that we'll have to look at the digitalization of the asset. And one of the, I think, probably differentiation that we need to do is between digitization and digitalization. So my only submission would be that to some extent digitalization would also be catalyzed by proper digitization, and we brought it out in terms of land records being digitized, or so I think that would be a good platform to start with. And we are actually practically seeing, or we are hoping that will happen. I would like to highlight one more area where we want to expand our service, because as of today we are trying to cover the entire financial life cycle of a person, I would say. And we can broadly divide it into, say, savings, and most of us go through that savings. We like to do transactions. We want to invest. We want to protect ourselves through insurance, and we also want to borrow. So most of us would have done all this, and we want to carry the same set of services to the last mile, and as we like to call it, I mean, the real benefit will come when you touch the Antyodaya. If all these things can go there. And to that matter, the credit is one area we are looking at. As a bank, as a payments bank, we are not allowed to offer credit, but what we are seeing is that if the digitization journey can be there, then it also has a good application. Unfortunately, don't have the kind of a digital footprint that most of us end up having. So while we find it easy to get offers for personal loans, the person, the villager who wants to just buy flowers or just want to buy vegetables, still goes to the local money lender. So that's where some amount of digitization would help. Similarly, people having small parcels of land which they want to use to take a loan against. I think RBI is doing something, and we are trying to partner with them. But I think that digitization could be a good step towards digitalization, and I think that difference would be nice to have. So I think pretty much for now I just had this set of points. The fact that somewhere in this process the post offices kind of reinvented themselves, and they have become a hub for e-governance services, e-financial services. And just a critical point that I would like to highlight is the entire journey that we have created is a completely paperless journey. So since maybe we got the advantage that we were the last mover, so we were able to create a completely paperless journey. So today a postman can walk into this place and open accounts for you do any transaction for you and it will be completely paperless. So that is something which is quite significant, so that as we say, while we are monetizing an asset, while we are trying to unlock potential, as was in fact told by a few of the panelists, the cost of doing it also should not be prohibitively high. So that affordability aspect comes in. I think we would be able to do it to some extent, that the cost of per transaction should not be prohibitively high. Then the model would fail. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So a couple of my takeaways from what you just mentioned, Sri Satyakumar, is one, the digital assets itself, that the entire other stack, the DPI, those are significant assets. In fact, C-DEP did a separate study earlier, which was released by the then secretary, the previous secretary Meti, which showed that if we open up our digital systems, the government systems are opened up, then it will contribute to 5% increase in the GDP itself. That was a quantum of increase. In fact, we were inspired by what the Indian Railways had done, because when the Indian Railways opened up its system, it created an ecosystem of startups and companies and so on, which actually had revenues which was 5% of CRIS's revenues, right? And when we take it forward, it just showed that if all the systems of the government is opened up, that lead to a 5% increase in the government's own GDP. And incidentally, government of Australia did a similar study with a different methodology. It came out with a similar number, that if they open up their system, then also they will get some 4.8% of increase in the GDP. So, this also amplifies what Sri Vikas Chandra was saying, that assets are of different kinds. It's not just land, but digital assets and things that we can't really touch and feel. So all of those are part of the non-tangible assets that we need to look at. The second is this whole concept of digitalization to digitization. I think that's an important point we need to keep in mind. And third also is the fact that the creation of IPPB on top of Department of Post itself is a great example of creating new assets out of, and these are not physical assets again. These are a corporate asset or an institutional asset that was created, which is of tremendous value. And I think IPPB is perhaps one of the few institutions that's able to reach the Antyodaya, as you rightly mentioned. Not every institution has that capability across the length and breadth of the country. So very, very deep insights again. Thank you so much. With that, we'll move to Dr. Sandeep Chatterjee. Dr. Chatterjee, we'll look forward to your views, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Sorry, I'll just take a little break. Mr. Saini needs to leave, but we've got a little memento for you. I request Akanksha to please hand over the memento. Just bear with us, and we deeply appreciate you taking out your time and sharing your views with us. Not at all, but as was suggested, we'll catch hold of you again for extracting some case studies.
If I may just take half a minute.
Yes,
just
please.
to take off from what Mr. Natarajan has said. I mean, how we are trying to leverage on the mutual assets of the posts as well as the railways. In fact, there has been an experiment last year of leveraging post offices reach to the last mile and the middle mile reach of the railways. One of the biggest issues was of the railway was it never delivered, especially freight from first mile to the last mile. So there has been a budget announcement in February 21, wherein Post and Railways would get together. Postal would do the first mile and last mile transactions, and Railway would do the middle mile. I mean, that was an experiment which succeeded pretty well, and I think that is going to be a future. In fact, it falls into the context of how the assets mutually can be leveraged to get a larger value for the society. So I just wanted to mention this.
I think very important, because for a long time we have been talking about the so-called silos to be broken down, the whole of government concept, and that itself leads to massive value unlocking. and that process becomes simpler if there is existing digitalization.
So we integrated, let me tell you, I think we integrated one app wherein a postman can actually, we open it up to the customers. They can in fact register and saying that I want to move from this place to this place. We gave a timetable service. Then the same information goes through the app to the postal departments. They divert the truck from the post offices, and there is a barcode which is scanned, and that the time stamp is actually carried right through up to the delivery, and the payment is done. So I mean, entire transparency. We built a mutual app, and with no outsider, between postal department, railways, and the payment gateway of State Bank. I mean, it's going to be rolled out shortly, and I'm sure this is a good context to just raise that.
I think that's a case study we'll definitely include. Thank you. Dr. Jarji, sorry for the interruption.
Good afternoon to all. Thank you once again to Dr. Mitra. I will be touched upon another important assets that will be generating, or we are generating daily basis with our development path study, that is electronic waste. So if you see the last 4 decades, our journey of IT services, we have consumed significant amount of electronic products. And with last 9 years of our Digital India campaign and digitization effort, it has enhanced it manifold. Now in 2019 only, we have found that we are the 3rd largest generation of e-waste, and we are increasing 18% year-on-year basis. So that international study showed that we have already created per annum 3.23 million metric ton. So that is our 2019. So to 2023, we have already crossed 5 million metric ton of electronic waste. As you all know, electronics is one of the high-tech product. If you talk about smartphone, that requires 69 element of periodic table, we are using it. But see, in the country, if you are actually tracking the materials, so you require material passports. But our multinational company who are supplying the products, they are not interested to track that material. So what is happening? Majority of the materials or the products are going to the informal sectors. So basically, if you see the 3.23 million metric ton, 5% are actually recycled, and they are also recycled in informal hand. So their yield is typically 30%. They are using crude methods like potassium cyanide, acid leaching. So it is polluting. You have a biggest hub of informal hub in Muradabad. You must have seen. I have visited many times. There are more than 5 lakhs workers are working in a very deteriorating condition. Their homes are actually used, the chulhas are used for roasting the printed circuit board to softening the components. Maybe they are illiterate, but their chemistry is strong. So they know where the gold is available. They are taking the connectors, chips, they are putting it to the one pot, putting the pellets of potassium cyanide. Acid, selling is banned by Supreme Court, but pellets of potassium cyanide from a Delhi party is supplying to Muradabad. That is all informal sectors. All photographs we have taken. But our ministry is trying for last 5 years to talk to the Urban Development Ministry, MOEF, because the subject matters lies with MOEF for the rule making. Urban development actually having a collection. There could be a good collection if you see the Europe. Their municipalities are basically collecting along with the recyclers, but we could not make them understand that this is one of the important topic. And if you are not actually addressing this, just see the 3.23 million metric tons. Let us take that is asset. 50%, that is 1.5 million metric tons is the iron and steel. Okay, 0.7 million metric tons are non-formal. They are gold, silver, and this type of assets. 0.7 million metric tons. 0.8 million metric tons are the plastics. There are 7 different categories of plastics where we have engineering plastics. These plastics should not go to the road. but we do not track them. So they are going here and there. So unless we are creating a skilled manpower, unless we are creating a eco park type of facility in the country where the formal and informal should work together, so these assets we are using. And you must have seen that some of the materials is very critical. We do not have indium, no longer have indium, but indium tin oxide is used for all flat panels as a contacting ITO, indium tin oxide. So indium is no longer there. There is no tantalum. Tantalum was used for a waste, capacitance. Per volume capacitance is waste. Of course, the engineers have changed from tantalum to the graphene capacitor, aerosol capacitor. But still, continuously we cannot change it. And also we do not have lithium. Recently we found some source in J&K. But we do not have cobalt. But in lithium ion battery we are using them. We do not have neodymium, rare earth, which we are using for hard disk. So can we track those assets and actually create that waste management in place, robust waste management, and it should be done in a formal sectors. Because if you see some of the data, mind-boggling. 3.23 million metric ton, this is our generation, 2019, that is having almost 97,000 tons of printed circuit. Okay, 3% is the average. Smartphone is having 12%, electrical type of products are having 1%, so average 3%. 97,000, if you are having 0.04% of gold, that is giving you 50 tons of gold, having $1.8 billion of market. And I talked about 69 elements, it is not gold. Printed circuit board is having 30% copper, is basically copper and epoxy layer. Okay? So we are very rich country, I should say. We are scattered our materials. One study is showing the 13 billions of smartphone lying idle. 13 billions. Because of the OEM, they are continuously changing their product due to the business interest. All the products are having an inherent obsolescence. The software will not support you. They do not have their components placed in the market. So consumer will be forcefully to change their product. And we are not ensuring, if you see that in 2021, our ministry has developed an action plan submitted to Niti Aayog, where we told that all the government sectors should not own any product. It should be the service model. Okay? If you are storing a product, one officer is changing, one IS is changing, next officer will not take the same product. We will be purchasing another. That product is lying in a store, warehouse. This can be used for the school. This can be used for small businesses. If you are going for a service model, so this is possible. So these are some of the action we have already articulated in our action plan. We are trying to do something, but first of all, we should see that how the product can be used for longer time, because we are in India, we must have already consumed 500 millions of mobile phones, but for reaching the digital India actual sense, we require to give every citizen a smartphone. Okay. And that is not possible if you do not have the material. Because for your functioning of your touch screen, we require 9 different rare earth elements. That is not available. So this is the thing I should sensitize this August gathering. So we should think over, so that we should have a robust mechanism, we should not lose. And if you are actually, this is my feelings, that another 10 years, another decade, the waste management verticals will be creating the most important contribution in the GDP. That is for sure. Because so much of things are available, having a, so our ministry has started many things. I'm not briefing here because knows long for last 2-3 decades. Very recently, we have done a Center of Excellence in Hyderabad with our C-DEP, along with IIT Hyderabad, where we are trying to create startup. We have 7 different cost-effective technology on printed circuit board, lithium-ion battery, plastics, solar panel, hard disk. So then we are creating the startup through this, so that they can initiate this business for the country. So this is one part of my story I was saying. Another part I think nobody has touched upon, I should mention, that is the data. So data, now I am looking after the cyber law and data governance. So very recently we come out with a Digital Protection Data Act. So as you see, due to the 7-8 years of digitization effort, we have used a humongous data. We have already crossed 100 million terabytes of data. But we have just created an enabling system so that startup can use them in a lawful purposes and develop different products, giving the service to our country. So this is another area we should see as an asset, and this will be monetized in last another 2-3 decades. It will be used as a asset for our SMEs or SME startup to grow, and also will create a different solution for international. So this is 2 aspects I mentioned this. Thank you.
Yes, please, yeah.
Sandeep sir, I am tempted to add one point. This is on a lighter note. Sir, waste should remain a liability, not an asset. Why I say it so is because that is where we start. We start taking them as assets. Look into the today's newspaper. There is a tender issued by the government of UP, and it is about construction and demolition waste. And they are trying to develop it on PPP, thinking as an asset. But the problem aggregates when we start taking assets as wealth. अगला लेवल वही है कि जिसका wealth समझने लगते हैं. हमको लगता है कि वेस्ट को हम लोग लाइबिलिटी ही समझें, उससे कुछ फायदा होता है, बेहतर है, लेकिन उसको मतलब अगला लेवल पे it is very easy to jump when we start taking waste as wealth. उसको just on a lighter point, sir.
Yeah. No, I think important points.
We have to handle the different waste. If please visit few eco park in Hong Kong and other places, because some of the metals from other waste can be used in a same pyrolysis machine. Okay, so you have to optimize this. Try to think in a different angle. Which waste you are talking about? I have concentrated on electronic products. It's a very huge, resource material is into it. And that has to be handled in some other. If you are talking about the end of life car, 80% is electronics now. So you have to find out a different means. You should have some big eco park where all the waste can enter, and there should be some mechanisms. This is not a rocket science. It's not quantum technology, So it can be handled in a better way, so that our material can be come back to the phrase economy.
Circular economy.
In fact, under circular economy, there is no concept of waste at all.
Yeah.
So, the point taken, I think both the points are extremely
For
important.
that, I should mention, for that design should be, because waste we have learned from the industrial revolution. So for digital revolution, the waste design of the product should be such that the refurbishment is easier and recycling is easier. That has started just now. So you should not use the lead as a shoulder. You can use steel. So that is started now. But if the designs is not your recycling friendly or refurbishment friendly, because modular phone in the Europe is very famous. 80% are again used in the new product. So these concepts are very new, but we are growing very fast. So if you are not taking, address this, it could be a disaster for us.
In fact, it reminds me of the China-Japan standoff. And when China stopped the supply of rare earth materials to Japan, Japan started mining e-waste. So, and I think, as you rightly said, by putting the term waste, our mind goes in a different direction. So we need to address it in an appropriate manner. In fact, the other issue that Dr. Chatterjee talked about was planned obsolescence that's built into the materials, which leads to actually in Moradabad many of the kids are dying for the process that you mentioned. So it is a criminal activity that's going on, I would say. And from C-DEP again, we published an article which looked at planned obsolescence in the lighting industry. So there was a cartel that was formed by all the key lighting industries around 1950, which went ahead and said that you can't be creating these incandescent lamps which has more than 2000 hours of life. And if you do that, you will be penalized, and many of the manufacturers are penalized. There are light bulbs which are incandescent light bulbs from 1950 which are still on right now. So we had that capability, we had the technology, and we did that research from C-DEP side in the context of LED. Because LED had promised 50,000 hours, they are not even there for 20,000 hours. How many of you have a LED that you have bought which is not fused? And LED has not been around for more than 4 or 5 years, right? So they were supposed to exist for 20 years. And you buy once, they put it and it starts working. So the planned obsolescence is a very critical issue. It's almost a white collar crime that's going on. One of the things that we were trying to push from C-DEP side is right to not update. So when the update comes in, we don't want to update because it's an update which is killing the phone. It's not really taking care of security. I mean, it must be. But at the end of the day, it is killing the phone or the laptop and so on and so forth. So we absolutely, and we got strong views on this from C-DEP side. So thank you so much, Dr. Chatterjee. I think very, very insightful, and I think having a digital asset to give oversight to at least the smart devices so that their cradle to grave life cycle is tracked. It's hugely possible, and we'll try and work with you and take that thought process forward. Thank you. We'll now move to Mr. Bikash Kumar from SAP. And before you start, I would like to thank you from C-DEP for funding this research study. And I hope your contribution is not just towards funds, but also technological contribution, taking forward the digitalization journey.
No, absolutely. Thank you very much, Jayjit. I'll start with thanking the C-DEP team. I mean, Ruben Banerjee, Urvashi Kaul, and Dr. Mitra for actually putting this together and getting all these stalwarts at the citadel of innovation, as we call it, in Delhi. So thank you very much for that. But quickly responding to what Mr. Satyakumar and Joint Secretary Mr. Chadha said, and that's exactly why we are here. I mean, SAP as a company is well known to all of you. We provide solutions and everything, but for us, that data, so the buzzword that SAP today is doing, and this is not just for asset, but it is also going into the sustainability aspect or also into the electronic waste aspect. So just coming to Dr. Chatterjee's thing, I mean, that was very pertinent to bring in e-waste because, countries like Australia and everybody have now set up committees to look into critical minerals because it is perishable, it is not going to be there with everybody forever, and it is very important to track them and replenish them, otherwise we'll be running into serious problem. So one thing, Jaydeep, where we and why we are here today is, especially while capturing of data, wonderful examples and case studies that you said is there, but one thing that we sincerely feel, and that came in from a couple of my interactions with other government officials, and we will try to take that into consideration, Manish. I mean, just to tell you, is obviously when we talk about data, we are also talking about trust, transparency, and interoperability. So rest assured that that aspect of data as oil and ensuring that it is safeguarded and not misused is will definitely be taken. Our sole purpose of being here is to seek from you as to what can we do to ensure that the data that is being captured in bits and pieces can be more interoperable so that the utilization is maximized. The buzzword that I was talking about, Jayjit, is RRR that we are talking about. So you basically report, you record, you report, and then you respond or act onto that. And we are using this RRR for our sustainable solutions that are now getting inbuilt into the ERPs that SAP is rolling out. So that is something which is very good. Another case study that probably we will be working with C-DEP team is something that Mr. Satyakumar, Mr. Saini probably mentioned. Manish mentioned about Australia. So Australia, actually, the public infrastructure, is getting digitized. So the government of Australia has actually, you talked about the Victoria example, but SAP has recently come out with a joint paper for the Australia government to digitize the entire public infrastructure, because that's how they want to capture the data and go ahead, and we will probably be working with C-DEP to bring that thought process also over there. So that's all. The whole purpose, thank you very much, Jayji. The whole purpose is to really seek some views, in case time permits, as to where solution providers like SAP or technology providers like SAP can capture the concerns that can be rolled out in the next set of solutions that SAP will be bringing. So thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. And we look forward to case studies from SAP if you could contribute to that. So with that, we'll move to Sri Anurag Jain. Anurag Jain is from the National Highways Infrastructure Investment Managers Private Limited, which helps in monetizing the highways that's being built up. So your views are very, very important. Look forward to it.
So thank you, first of all, thank you Dr. Jajit and rest of the C-DEP team for inviting me here, and greetings to the ladies and gentlemen. Let me start with sharing a brief anecdote to bring this benefit of digitalization into the context. We all know about FASTag. Now FASTag was implemented by NHAI somewhere, it was made compulsory from Feb 2021. It was implemented before that, but it was made compulsory in Feb 2021. The daily collection of NHAI from all the toll plazas in the country before FASTag was implemented was to the tune of roughly 50 to 60 crore per day. And just to give you the context, we are talking of 2021, we are in 2023. So there is an added element of traffic growth and tariff. But even if you discount that, today NHAI daily collection is close to the order of 180 to 190 crore per day. In fact, they touched a high of 193 crore in May. Just look at the jump from 50 to 60 crore to 193 crore over a period of 2.5 years. What enabled it? It was the digitalization, it was the forced conversion to the FASTag, the transparency that came in, everybody got the uniform access to the data, transparency, no information arbitrage, everybody has to put in the bids at the right prices, that led to this collection. So when we talk of impact of digitalization, the largest impact lies on the asset owner, which in this case is Government of India. The benefit of that through maximum price discovery of the asset is huge, humongous. That's one element. The second element, for example, that NHAI today is working on is on the maintenance of the asset. So in fact, there is a project going on within NHAI where we are working on how to take benefit of technology in better management of the assets. For example, if we talk about road, and just give one example. So the model that NHAI follows is it builds road and it gives a contract. Now either the contract are on concession terms, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, or there are short-term O&M contracts, which could be 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 5 years. The challenge that comes is not every vendor is equal. There are some good vendors, there are some not so good vendors. There is a huge monitoring required, one. And two, even at times, even if the vendor intentions are good, there could be a delay between things happening on the ground and things being attended to. For example, if a pothole happens, it may be 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before something happens on the pothole. So we are working on a technology on how to make the entire process digital. So we have a routine patrolling vehicles. We are putting in dashboard mounted cameras on top of it to capture the pothole almost on a daily basis, and then it goes into a system which get monitored all the level up to the RO with escalation metrics. If it doesn't get attended within a particular day, then it will get escalated, etc. So that the things are attended to. Now, why I'm sharing this example? The benefit of that is it reduces the cost of maintenance and it gives a better experience to the road user. Ultimately, both enables a better price discovery. So from asset owner perspective, the more digitalization, the more digitized the entire system is, the better is the value. Let me share another perspective from the concessionaire perspective. For example, I am part of NHINPL, which is the NHI InvIT. We are the concessionaire for NHI road assets. Now, when we maintain the assets, or when we get the benefit of this data being available, the advantage is our ability to predict and our ability to forecast returns significantly goes up. So, for example, ultimately, as a concessionaire, when I am bidding for NHI asset, I have to make a payment to NHI. I have to bid a value for that. But if I have a better data quality, my confidence on that data quality goes up. I am able to forecast my returns in a better way, enabling me to pay a higher value. So, all in all, again, it leads to a better price discovery, and again, my ability to manage the asset goes up. And let me take a third perspective now. See, we all talk about India being a capital scarce country, but like all things, India is a country of several dimensions, and there are two dimensions. On the one hand, we have capital scarcity put in infrastructure. On the other hand, we have so much capital that share markets are going up because there is a huge domestic savings sitting out there, which is getting channelized through mutual funds and lot of other institutional investors, which right now is focused primarily on financial assets, which is primarily shares. If we are able to move that financial savings partly to infrastructure, the benefits are too much. And why it will move, or when it will move? Again, when this so-called institutional investor, I'm talking of mutual funds, I'm talking of insurance companies, I'm talking of provident funds, pension funds, the amount of savings that they have locked into themselves, which right now either they're investing in government securities, fixed deposit, or a bit of share market, capital market. Once they see the benefit of transparent digital information being available out there in the public domain, their confidence in terms of ability to invest goes up. Again, I'll go to my example. In NHI InvIT, we launched NHI InvIT in 2021. At that time, we had zero pension and provident from domestic in our unit holder base, zero. We had two large foreign pension funds, but from the domestic industry, the investors were a bit reluctant at that time. Today, I have 120 investors, of which 40 are domestic provident fund and pension funds. What enabled that? Once they see that everything is being transparently available, everything is getting digital, fast track a lot in terms of this movement towards digital economy. So this enables people to put in money, because when we are talking of asset monetization, ultimately somebody needs to put in the money. And if we can create that channel for domestic savings to come into that, the benefit is going to be much, much longer and huge. So we have to keep working on the systems, how to make it more interlinked, like you spoke about breaking the silos. For example, right now when we are talking of our assets and where it interlinks with the transmission line, how to make sure that both the digital databases talk to each other so that the maintenance times goes down or downtime goes down, and ultimately get to the benefit for the both unit holders, investors, as well as for the road user. That's my point, JC.
Thank you so much. I think it's a classic example of how data has actually helped find value and increase value in terms of daily tolls, in terms of price discovery. I think NHI is a great example of how digitalization of assets is really helping. So thank you so much. We will add that as a case study and we'll come back to you for more details. Thank you. So with that, we'll move to Shri Pritinder Singh Dada. We look forward to your views on the same matter.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon to everybody. And for our department particularly, there is for us the definition of asset monetization is a bit different, because majorly asset monetization for us means outright sale only. There is no concessionaire involved. That part I found that it is missing in the policy paper, and the reason being that BSNL and MTNL, there are the main two PSUs which have the land banks available with us, and there are other PSUs also under our department, but the value is, the book audited value of land bank with these two PSUs only is around 67,000 crores, and this is the book value I am talking about. Market value would be lakhs of crores, and cabinet has given them a target-based, you could say, asset monetization targets have been given. Like for MTNL it is 13,000 crores and BSNL it is 11,000 crores. As you all are aware, they are sick companies right now, and the budgetary support has been taken back by the cabinet. They have given them these targets and they have been clearly told that your budgetary support will depend upon whatever you achieve by selling off your assets. So we are facing a very unique type of problem because the expansion of telecom sector was happening in 1980s and 1990s. At that time it was called Department of Telecom Services and Department of Telecom Operations. There were two wings, and they bought land in mass. And not only they bought, even state governments gave them on very nominal rates to lay down telephone exchanges and all that. So we have a very huge land bank. But the problem was when in 2000 the BSNL got created, that land bank went to BSNL and MTNL, but there was no digitization. There was not even a proper land record maintenance at that time because we all know there is that government mindset is there that who is going to ask about this thing. Land is there. Nobody thought that 20 years, after 20 years down the line, you will be forced to sell that land only to survive. So right now what we are facing very unique problems, like there is no clear property record available with us. There is no title deed available with us. They are writing to us to give them the title deed if it is available. Now who will go and find the deeds of 1980s and 1990s? The value of such properties, for some examples, is 2000 in Mumbai only. MTNL has around 8,000 crore properties. These are only 3 plots I am talking about. Each plot around in Mumbai, it's a high value metro, you know that, and each plot is around 2,000 crore, 3,000 crores value. But we are not able to monetize it because of these factors. If we have the property documents, then the state government is not willing to let go or willing to give us the related NOCs. By hook or by crook, they will find a way not to, like the sir has left now, he was mentioning that at field level, in state levels, they don't have any idea about that any monetization is required by government also. But it is required. They don't understand the importance of selling off these parcels which are lying down. They are useless otherwise also. And we have been trying to negotiate with several governments. Then again, that human factor or political factor is also there. State governments with same government, they are more readily agreeing to our demands or our requirements. If the opposite party, political party, this is my personal view, if opposite party is there in that state government, then monetization takes a backseat in those states also. So these factors are there which are hampering us. And although GLIS software is there, which has, we have uploaded all that data, but that does not show the exact area which is available with BSNL or MTNL. It does not show if there is any encroachment there. When we finally go to the bidding stage, at that time sometimes the bidder only come and tell us that your area is encroached by a particular, or your title is not clear to this area. So digitization was required, and now since last 3-4 years we have started moving in that direction, and hopefully we will achieve that. The second part which related to asset monetization is that is the concessionaire part, which we consider them as core assets. That is the tower and fiber assets which we have. And right now BSNL is selling off around 10,000 towers, approximately valued at 4,200 crores, which again will be utilized by us for capex and servicing our debt only. That is what has been mandated by government. But here we are not facing any problem simply because the data is available. Digitization was there from day one. The tower asset is available with BSNL and MTNL, and we are just proceeding in a very smooth way. So this is how such a big difference which digitization only makes. And another thing regarding monetization of assets of DOT, I would like to point out that like you have written here, digital thread for combining various assets with data. That is very much required because it cannot be in silos. We recently 3 months back, our one plot in Noida was sold to CBSE. So CBSE was not aware that we are selling of land, and we were not aware that CBSE requires land. Within the government organizations, this should not have. There should be a common platform there. Now we have our secretary wrote to all the central government secretaries that we are selling of land, because from CBSE it came to our mind that okay, this can also happen, and the policy is very clear, and everybody is very happy doing that, because government to government sale is directly permissible. There need not be any bids. We just have to arrive at a reserve price and everything is happy. Another part, sir, which you have repeatedly pointed out in your report is that valuation aspect of the property. That needs to be a little bit more elaborated with an example, because what happened, there is a plot in Noida sector 62. Two valuation reports came. One put it at 1500 crores, the other put it at 600 crores. So such a huge difference. This is the third valuation we have got it done. And now that guy has come with 900 crores, so we have three values of the same plot. It is still, even if it is 600 crores, it carries a big value for us. But the government needs to intervene here. That how, in case of a government department, how do we proceed with finalizing the value? Because selling of property is also a very scary aspect in government departments, because nobody wants to burn their fingers because the reserve price, when the bids will come, that will be dependent on the valuation reports of these independent valuers. So we need something in this report should be there when the government is completely selling it off, and how to actually arrive at that property value. Because in our case, all the plots are either residential, commercial, institutional, and situated in metros and tier 1, tier 2 cities. So this is a unique case which we are facing. So some things we have learned from this. We have seen that these reflect our concerns also, but some need to be added. So thank you.
So thank you so much. Again, a lot of insights that we were not privy to, that we were not aware of. I have some quick questions. That for the properties where you don't have a clear ownership because of the deed not being available and so on, why wouldn't DEP give it on lease? Because you can't sell it because you don't really own it in that sense. But why not give it on lease?
No, for leasehold properties also you need the mutation to be in the name of BSNL or MTN.
No, what I meant is instead of selling it,
yes,
why don't you lease it? Because in that case you don't need to have...
Because Cabinet has given us a target based on years. We cannot wait for 10 years for the money to flow in. We need the cash now. That is the
second question I have was that, and I'm not familiar with the licensing rules of the airwaves, but you have airwaves as an asset, and is there any thought on monetizing that through other telecom companies?
Look, that is an asset of DOT. That is already there. Spectrum usage charges we already collect there. That has nothing. BSNL also pays the department that charges, and other operators are already paying us. So that goes to Consolidated Fund of India. This amount Cabinet has told them to sell it off and service your own debt and service your own capital requirements, capital expenditure.
Yeah, no, I think complex issues, and if you look at what has happened to the textile mills within Mumbai, most of them got converted into malls, and what happened was that thousands of people got jobs from every single plot, and huge amount of economic value got unlocked just because the old textile mills got converted into these malls, and those mills were defunct, and nothing was happening. So it'll be quite valuable once your parcels of lands gets converted and you monetize it. Thank you so much for sharing the details. So with that, we'll move to Shri Subbarayedus. I'm sorry, maybe I've mispronounced it. We look forward to your views, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. First of all, I express thanks for inviting me for this very valuable forum, I can say. Thank you very much. So basically, I think you know, Airports Authority of India is the sole organization which manages the airspace, entire Indian airspace, extending to oceanic area also. We are the sole ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization, has given us the right to administer and manage. So airspace is a statutory duty for us. management, air traffic services and air navigation services across the India's territory, beyond also. But airports now are being under different administrations. Airports Authority is managing still around 150 airports. So one of the function of Airports Authority is develop the new airports. That is the ambitious project of Government of India. 250 airports we need to do by 2025. That is for extending the reach. Prime Minister's regional connectivity today, Desh ka Aam Nagark Udan, that is being the primary focus. Where small airports, not financially viable, this is one challenge we have got. But existing, which are working well and profitable airports who have already done some monetization, 6 airports of Ahmedabad, Lucknow, Mangaluru, that is in 2018-19, who have done that successfully. Transaction was very smooth. Lease, we have given 50 years lease, we have given. One challenge we faced is everything has come to one company. This is the greatest challenge we face. Even though it is an individual bid process, RFP is different and competitive bidding, you know, the number of participants are very good. 86 applications and 25 entities have participated. Still, Adani Enterprise Limited, it's a public domain, so they quoted, I don't say aggressively, but people say that that is aggressive bidding. Of course, this is the only allegation sort of thing, but it has been proven that it is not aggressive. People think, you know, one of the company has quoted 48 rupees. That does not give indication that there is a workable price. Adani has quoted 177 for Ahmedabad. So the variation is such a huge one, but we have seen that statistics is not very high. Only how the concessionaire or bidding entity sees that potential. So the main thing to value capture, the competition alone will bring the value capture. That is first one. We have to ensure that transparent bidding is there, and our reserve price or whatever the estimated potential of that airport revenue should be done in an accurate manner. For airports who have got, generally when so long as we are maintaining, we know our balance sheet, but our balance sheet does not represent the potential of coming 50 years. This is the challenge, because the traffic forecast is not accurate. Even though we estimate Ahmedabad will grow from say 11 million passengers per annum now, say 25. It cannot grow beyond a point because there is a land constraint. Ahmedabad airport cannot expand beyond a point. That is site constraint. Even if potential is there, there is no option for expanding. Runway cannot be increased. So 3 things we are basically challenges in the data. I liked your report, basically relying on the data accuracy, data consistency, and flow should be from the source where it is there. Land records is one of the important things. We have got, luckily, Airports Authority has managed from a lot of efforts with the state governments. Land details are available, mutation is going on, continuation. Our ministry is monitoring day to day how much land is getting mutated. We are also 3rd largest land, not owner, you can say holder, because of the airport's nature itself. But land by itself does not give any value. That is one of the important. This is one misnomer. So, we have got Lucknow Airport, we have got 1260 acres of land. And Trivandrum is the least one, 656 or something land. But traffic potential Trivandrum is much higher than the Lucknow. So people think you have given 1200 acres land to the concessionaire and you are not capturing the value. This is also we have faced a challenge. So the equation is not how much land you are giving, how much return will come. Because land cannot be used other than for the airport purpose. So Act has to be, Airports Authority Act has got a restriction. You cannot use for the just simply developing convention centers, developing the thoroughly commercial development. It does not permit. So this balancing is the one of the challenge. So what I have seen, what we have observed from the concession contracts, the private builders will build for the potential from the non-aeronautical revenue. We have got 2 streams of income basically. One is aeronautical revenue, which comes from terminal building construction, passenger fee that is built in the ticket. So if you are purchasing a ticket from say Delhi to Chennai, you will pay some 5,000 rupees or so. 200 rupees user development fee will be there. That is charged for development of the airport permitted by the regulator, Airports Economic Regulatory Authority, AERA. So aeronautical tariff is regulated by AERA. Non-aeronautical revenue is not regulated. That is the crux. Even though some portion of the revenue earned by the concessionaire from private sector is from private enterprise, that is cross-subsidized for reducing the aeronautical tariff. One greatest challenge is monitoring the revenues from non-aeronautical. That is the greatest challenge for us because it is purely private. So one of the learning actually what Airports Authority has learned, Delhi and Mumbai, we have got joint venture route. Dial and Mial, we are a partner in that. 26% stake is there with us. So their revenue share is the concept. So that also is undergoing some of the challenges, arbitration cases going on. What constitutes revenue is a big challenge. So these definitions are, because from the perspective of revenue, all the gross revenues, but how do you monitor that? The point of sales and digitization has helped, but still this is the grey area. So we have changed it to per passenger basis charge in the 6 airports leasing transaction. Finance Ministry and everybody, Niti Aayog worked very tremendously. We have come out with per passenger, throughput of domestic passenger, we have taken as a bid parameter this time. The one challenge is now invoicing is the issue. Still we are doing, I think SAP, I request, we have got SAP program with us in Airports Authority in a limited way. People, sir, frankly, do not know how to use optimistically, This is the biggest challenge. Our IT sector, IT head also is there. We are still working out with some consultants. How to integrate the SAP, the capacities, capabilities with the data flow and creating invoice. We have got internally invoice generation separate. The source of data, we have got 3 agencies because airlines are the primary generation of data. How many, who has traveled from which place to which place. They have got their own platform, the data flow. So they give printout an email system, they transfer the passenger manifest details. Very rudimentary. People will laugh at your very high-tech industry. Aircrafts are monitored with seamless transition, but data flow is having lot of disconnects. So the precise problem is airlines own the real data. How many number of infants traveled in the aircraft, how many exempted, fare exempted passengers, how many VIPs are there, some crew members. This data we correlate with air traffic data. Like aircraft has got 180 seater capacity, how much is filled up, then the passenger manifest, the same passenger you might have cancelled the flight. So this inconsistency, what we are doing right now, we are taking data from airlines each. We physically check the data. This is a very unfortunate thing. We check from Indigo, SpiceJet, Air India. Some 10 airlines operate from Chennai. Now Delhi, it is impossible to calculate from airlines. Because so many airlines are there, international. Then some non-scheduled flights will come. So suppose your company, IIT has got a chartered flights of professors. So 12 people travel. Permissions will be there, DGCA will give. But the number of passengers details won't be captured by anybody. So this is the challenge. Airline data, how to integrate at one place. We have got Airport Operations Service Center. AOCC concept is there. All the data. This integration is not happening because different platforms are there. We are trying to work out. Our chairman sir has already taken up this. We want to generate the invoices based on the accurate data because passenger fee. Now concession fee charged number of passengers. So this is one aspect of grey area, data flow. The second one is there are so many agencies working at airports. The concession agreement what we have given is our brownfield airports I am talking. Greenfield airports are totally different set of things. They can do from starting to end. So brownfield airports, we have given the existing running airports to the concessionaire. So all the assets tracking we have done. Some data we have collected. Still the matching is not happening. Still going on. We have got some 2,500 items like generators and big equipment you can identify. But like number of trolleys, even though it looks to be very simple, trolley, why do you worry? But it is also an asset. Number of seating chairs, electrical fittings and other things are countable, nobody can take away. All this inventory, there is a mismatch. We are trying to find out some agency through RF tagging or something they will do. So that asset quality and its details and handing over process, we have done it smoothly so far. But still there are some reconciliation issues are going on. When you give the concession, operate, develop and hand over back to us after 50 years. Now who will be there to ensure that it is returned to in the same good condition? That is one of the good things I have seen. Asset quality maintenance has to be ensured. We have got systems in place, quality standards we have prescribed. One challenge is whether the investor is investing enough to meet the demand forecast. Suppose if he is not putting the money, the congestion happens. Now already it is happening. The minister is personally monitoring. Congestion at our airports that manage airports also and private sector also. Congestion is directly related to your capacity. But capacity alone will not give you. Your proper queuing processes are there. Number of passengers, at the same time flights are bunched together. These processes have to be integrated. These are the one challenge is the investors are more prone to use commercial areas more. This I think you can flag it. See the concessionaire, for example, Delhi airport you might have seen. If you want to go through the gates, you will travel through all the shoppings. It is good for servicing public's interest, but it will create congestion also. Some people are not interested to go through the shoppings and eateries. They want to go from the moment they enter into airport, they want to just go and board. So these conflicting objectives are there, but that should be managed. Even though there are ASQ, airport service quality measurements are there, we have appointed independent engineer also. The independent engineer will check whether service qualities are maintained. We are maintaining it. So that monitoring is now we are doing manual. So there I think technology intervention can come. How do you monitor on day-to-day basis? How to integrate in the not only dashboard at the ground level. We are having now, we are working out. Still that is not to be, with confidence we should be able to say yes. So two basic things on the passengers front, this is the thing. No doubt the congestion should not be there, functional requirement. But at the same time, they should have all the provisions of all facilities. They should be pleasurable experience. Good eateries, good clean water, comfortable seating, and elegant looking. So this is one of the challenges. Then besides that, when you are developing airport, because I think our Rajat Kumar sir was there, Dholera airport we are also developing in the joint venture with NICDIC and government of Gujarat. So what we are facing the issue is, the land acquisition is another issue. State governments are now thinking that central government or airports authority is just monetizing and you are not giving us any revenue share. This is the now biggest thing we are facing. I think our chairman and ministers, they will be dealing with the state governments. But what they feel, sir, airports authority of India is taking free of cost because this is infrastructure development and land is state matter. They give us. We are utilizing also. They see that I am giving you to remove your congestion, another 2 acres of land or 10 acres of land. But afterwards you are monetizing and you are earning money, you are not giving us any share. How to handle this? Policy level, I think you can just give some solution, some sort of thought process. Creating a JV is not a solution. We initially thought. The number of JVs will increase. That is not a workable solution. In fact, our within the forum I can say, within the forum I can say our views, the state government's idea is also one-sided. They think they are giving the land, but that land is not used by AI directly. That is only for creating infrastructure. And you are giving to third party on concession, we are not earning more. We are just outsourcing our functions under the Airports Act. Some of our functions we are giving for better efficiency to a bidding process, third party. That difference I think state government is not understanding. You got my point, no? So this needs to be, anyhow, we have discussed with our management also. These things are there. Some states, like whether it is a aligned with state government and central government. That is not the question. Fundamentally, state governments or anybody should understand this land is otherwise of no use for them also, because within the airport area, some 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers around, no structure can come beyond a height. You cannot use that land practically because there are height restrictions. Aircraft need some clear surfaces. So instead of keeping them the land unutilized, in any case they cannot use anything except for agriculture or low lying area. That is totally some state government bureaucrats also should understand. In and around the airport land cannot be developed by anybody, even if they don't give to us also, because height restrictions are there and that will be demolished because there are the regulations. So two things is protecting the airport outside also, safeguarding the airspace is the primary duty of local bodies. So local bodies, they are duty bound to. Aircraft Act says that, 1934 Act. So that they have to align with the objective of the overall aviation. They should not see that no airport is being monetized and the concessionaire is enjoying. These, I think, two policy issues we have to see. State government should really understand the monetization and getting the efficiency of the management and deploying the private funds, because private sector will have definitely profit motive, but they will be efficient in deployment. Every paisa, as you said rightly, it may cost 1.5 times or so sometimes, same infrastructure. People say Airports Authority will build a 500 crores terminal building in Punjab, Chandigarh. It is a joint venture of Chennai Airports Authority, Chandigarh administration, Punjab and Haryana government. We have constructed with 500 crores project, and land has been acquired by Punjab government from the farmers. But now that entire area, Mohali area, has become a beautiful city side development has become a boost. So larger interest should be kept in view. It is not just land alone.
There could be a possible solution to this.
Yeah,
See, development of an airport where the state government is giving the land, and land of course is a state subject, but then there will be an economic activity because of that airport.
Exactly.
So you have to bring them on board that this is the benefit which you are going to reap out of this development.
Yeah.
So consider it.
Correct. In fact, this has been already forwarded, sir. We have submitted. Only thing is, again, at layers of the JS level, second.
This is what I said. There is state subject.
Then it will become a bigger level.
There are constitutional implications.
At the secretary and above level, it is going. So this is there are 2-3 states, particularly Kerala. Fought a court case also with Kerala government for Trivandrum PPP. There is a classic case study you can see. Because High Court and Supreme Court were gone. Of course, case is now disposed of. Because certain things they try to challenge your process itself. Objectively something else. So these are the 3-4 things. Data, definitely as you said, data flow, integration of airline data and airport data with the state government and local bodies data. So that has to be in cohesion.
Right. No, I think very deep insights, Mr. Subbaredu. And again, like with anyone else, many of these issues we were not aware of. So I think we will circle back to you for more details on each one of them and the recommendations that you made. They're extremely valuable. I just wanted to
Jaji,
talk about.
Can just take 30 seconds?
Yes,
I just want to react to Subbaredu's comments. See, he mentioned that JVs are not working, which Andhra tried, Karnataka tried. I just want to leave one thought. Do you think a GST-like structure would work where you have pre-agreed share of revenues for state and center? Just want to leave that thought on the table. Where if the state government is providing land, pre-agreed, but so much percentage goes to the state and so much goes to the center. Just want to leave that.
No, this is very clear. This is not a joint venture, sir. Civil aviation is a central subject. Fundamentally, civil aviation is a central subject. States are partnering only for the, you can say cooperative purpose. Otherwise, civil aviation is a central subject. So that is one part. Second part is, you are talking about profitable airports. This idea comes from Ahmedabad or something. airports are having 125 loss-making airports. So where the state is not even ready to understand the problem. So see at the national perspective, Airports Authority of India is not one state organization. So from that perspective, they should see, like asking from the military establishments, they don't serve the state, for example. So that is, I think, very immature way of thinking. Like suppose Indian military, Indian Air Force, purpose is much bigger. The same way, the aviation and railway networks, even national highways, should be treated as a national assets. We should not see the localization. That is my point.
Well, in fact, it's an important point that Sridhar Jain raised because that 9% that they're getting itself should be motivation for the states to participate because it's increasing the state GDP.
Yes.
They get 9% out of it.
Exactly. In fact, this particular thing, I appreciate you have reminded me. We have seen from Ahmedabad itself, the GST component of the concession fee. The state government is getting much higher actually. I think you have a good point, sir. I will note down this, will highlight it.
So, in fact, we had quite a few times attempted to ring-fence the GST that will come from the future of an existing project, and we tried to finance it. I think one day we will be successful, but that's the concept that we would like to push. It has happened elsewhere in the world. It's not a new concept. Where future taxation coming from a project that's going to be built up, for example, if you have a flyover, if shops come around it, that impact area monetization then starts leading to the taxation coming up, which can then be ring-fenced and paid off for the bonds that is being raised against it. Very, very important point from Rajan.
Just one more thing I want to just flag it so that see, basically users have to get benefit. Ultimately, any PPP or anything, ultimately public has to get the benefit. Whether it is getting passed on or not is to be seen. Final objective. So the prices are regulated by ERA. So far as the user development fee, the tariffs for the airlines is at a reasonable level, and it is included in the ticket price. Only thing is, if you increase the user development fee, prices will go up and demand for air traffic will come down. So this is the basic thing.
No, absolutely. It's always a tight balance. Reminds me of a slightly unrelated matter that if you look at the Nagpur Air Force Center, there's a building right in front of it which is 4-story high, so it's permissible height. But you don't know who's watching it because the front of the building is straight overlooking the airport and everything that the Air Force is doing. And in spite of multiple reminders from the Air Force to the city, that building still stays there. So it's a matter of great concern.
Airports now they are shifting to some other location.
In Nagpur?
Discussions are going on so that it will not be impeded. The development is not impeded.
Right. But thank you so much for the 4 points, and we will get back to you for the deeper case studies on these. Thank you. We'll move to Professor Vigneshwara. Professor Vigneshwara has been working quite deeply with C-DEP on multiple policy issues. We keenly look forward to your views, Professor.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Jayjit. Good afternoon, everyone. Apologies for the delay in joining the meeting. I'm not feeling so confident talking today, especially with so many people who are doing real work. I'm just a Master G in IIT Delhi doing a lot of theoretical stuff. Alright. So given this, I read the report. Report is nice, comprehensive. Even if I were to give this report to a lot of my PhD students who may not read it, it's quite dense, a lot more text. As Mr. Vikas correctly pointed out, you need to really make it a little bit more appealing to policymakers. So given this, I would like to say that this report can think of using the best business practices, especially related to the digital platforms. When you talk about a digital platform, it works very well when you have an underutilized physical infrastructure, which is converted into a digital good, then it is available for trading in the open market. Somebody is using it for free. Say Uber, Airbnb are using basically cars and groups. The same logic can be extended for the infrastructure that is available with us. We can think of 2 ways of doing it. One is looking at transaction platforms. Look at Amazon and Flipkart. As a platform owner, you take responsibility for the transactions. When somebody is making transactions, you make a little bit of money. Another way of looking at this innovation platforms, where you don't really take responsibility for enabling the transactions, but you create a platform and allow people to innovate. Say for example, Android platforms. platforms, right? When you're looking at a mobile phone, the applications what you are using is not really owned by Android. It is not developed by Android. It is like external users are creating applications, uploading in the platform. Similarly, we can think of this entire infrastructure when it gets converted into digital infrastructure. You allow other people to aggregate, you allow other people to innovate, you allow other people to come up with the new business models. So users will end up using it. For instance, if I'm a private investor, I'm interested in knowing where to really invest, making use of the data coming from different departments like airport authority or postal office or ports, or looking at smart city initiatives. Is there any single place where I'm able to get the insights? Okay. These insights are possible if the data is available and somebody is aggregating, generating insights and make it available for people like me. Okay, so these are the one of the few ways by which we can exploit this digital infrastructure, which will automatically get into a monetization aspect. With this, I'll stop. Thank you.
So, excuse me, will you not have the issues relating to ownership of the platform?
The ownership of the platform, one option is either you own the platform or you also allow somebody to own this particular platform in terms of usage fee. Right? If in this table, every one of us are willing to share the data and clearly say this is the process by which you can share the data. Somebody can create a platform. An aggregator can come forward and create a platform themselves. That is also possible.
Or treat as another DPI. Yeah. Treat as a DPI like the Aadhaar stack that people suggested. So I think that will also solve the issue of the silos within the government, because that is the first challenge, and that's a much more important challenge. And then opening it up.
We don't really burden.
Actually, government has started working on interactive portals and the data platforms.
No, sir.
Like the Gati Shakti.
Like Gati Shakti, like means in Port Authority, we are formulating software where the concessionaire, where the ship liners, where the custom department, where all stakeholders can give their feedback, get the forms and upload the information so that their time of transaction gets reduced.
The onus of interacting or creating interrelationships also can be removed. Okay, you ask, okay, what is the data you can provide? Okay, what you can do, you provide. Okay, the rest of the departments also do the same thing. Okay, somebody will come forward and say that I'll take the responsibility of integrating. Okay, as long as you are providing the data, I will take the responsibility of integrating. I'm thinking of ways by which I can monetize it over a period of time.
Just a 10-second update. Sir, we have started this with an effort of about 3.5 years. We created a data strategy, the maturity of it, appointing nodal officers in every city, collecting data over multiple information. Today you'll have 100 cities, at least 120 data sets, curated, matured over a period, all available on public domain, call us Amplify. So I think we are moving towards data maturity and gradually we are there.
Eventually somebody will pick it up and thinking of a business model to amplify this monetization.
In fact, this whole open data issue was started when President Obama visited India, and there was a lot of momentum around that, and therefore open gov.in and so on was created. With the static data, unfortunately, we have seen that globally no large business has been created on static data, which is where C-DEP went ahead and suggested that we need to open up the systems and not just the data. Just like what Chris has done, what Railways has done. Because with all of the data and the systems that you're talking about, imagine what startups can do or what the private sector can do. We were just talking about the impact area on airports. But if we can get the airport data, what much more that we can do? You know, we exactly know what their preferences are, and these are high value people, because those who are moving to the airport have higher disposable income. So if I can get data about them on a continuous basis, when they're coming, when they're going, and therefore what kind of tastes they have, I can probably sell an apartment to them, you know, and so on and so forth. So the monetization of data and systems is something that I think will be worthwhile to look at. That's a huge value unlocking, just like what IPPB has done. On top of Indian Post, they have unlocked a massive amount of value. So moving from just not open data but also to open systems will be a significant increase in the value that we can unlock. And I would strongly encourage that, let's all put our heads together and see how we can use that. And that's something that, Vikas Chandra had mentioned, that asset is not just the physical land asset. There is so much of non-tangible assets out there, digital assets out there, that also needs to be monetized. Thank you, Professor Vignesh. We'll move to the last professor, and he's been the former director of IIIT Gwalior, and we have been working quite closely, Professor Deshpande. So over to you, and we can look forward to your views.
I will pick up from where Vignesh has left. And typically, the fundamental premise on which we work, all such systems should work, is our thinking and way of working is largely shaped by the environment and the context within which we operate. That is the fundamental premise we have to understand. And why this is important? Because we have invested a lot in digital infrastructure. You all recall, IMF has appreciated our effort, the way we have developed our digital infrastructure. And the point which you are making, it is what Government of India has estimated, that about 1.1% of our GDP has been saved because of this strong digital infrastructure. And India Stack is really a collective initiative which has got 3 layers. The first layer is basically our unique identity layers, which is provided by Aadhaar. Second is the unified payment interface. That is also very active, especially for post and other departments. And the third is data exchange, that is through digital locker and the account aggregator. So this infrastructure is at the backbone. I think this report must also mention about the huge investment which has been made in the digital infrastructure. That is a very important point to be noted. The second point, that we are all talking digitalization, and this is also a great enabler in meeting our SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals. And especially when we talk about SDGs, what I would say that SDG number 12, that is the responsible production and consumption, both. SDG 9, we talk about industry, innovation and infrastructure. And SDG 11, which talk about the smart cities and the community. So I think all these SDGs are also getting benefited by our strong presence of digitalization. I think we must make a reference to that, especially SDG 9. How this is going to help the asset monetization, digitalization of asset monetization in meeting SDG number 9. And in this connection, a lot has been said about the DT, that is the digital twin. Digital twin is basically amalgamation of a variety of technologies. We call it as AI, machine learning, augmented reality, virtual reality, and so on. Now this is really going to help in conceptualizing the initial stages of an asset, the way asset is being monitored, the way asset is being maintained, and maybe after some time, the way asset is being disposed of. Now, in this context, I would give strong reference to Virtual Singapore. Virtual Singapore is a very interesting initiative. They have created the entire digital twin of Singapore. And this initiative started in 2014. And they did a lot of experimentation, and that opened a lot of opportunities for them, especially for experimenting with the city infrastructure. What type of facilities should be there, what type of facilities can be disposed of, and so on. And it also improved the tax collection as far as Singapore Land Agency is concerned. And this is again a very interesting example between Singapore government, the National Science Foundation, and the Dassault system, which basically invested in creating the digital infrastructure for that. So similar model can be visualized in our context. Since we are now comfortable in handling data, we are also comfortable in handling a variety of scenarios. What is the purpose of such virtual model? it gives opportunity for creating a variety of scenarios. What will happen if this is suddenly broken? What will happen if new route has been taken, and so on. And in this case, we should also draw our attention to what PM Gati Shakti project is doing. We have been interacting with them, and there is a very ambitious target of having a capacity building. Under PM Gati Shakti, the target is to train 75,000 professionals as far as the platform is concerned. And this job is handled by NITI, now IIM Mumbai, and variety of other IITs, IIMs and NITs. I think we can imagine a similar capacity building exercise in this domain, because what is important, see what we often say, the ICE, the information, communication and education. The most important segment is education. Unless we educate all the stakeholders, we build the enough capacity, will not be able to reap the benefit. Otherwise, what will happen? This will be just an idea which has a limited acceptability. Unless everybody is involved, unless multiple stakeholders are properly educated, will not be able to reap the benefit. So from that point of view, I think we have to also mention about the capacity building exercise, which will may be running at the back end. The fourth issue you have mentioned, I am really happy that you have mentioned about having a strong monitoring mechanism. And that strong monitoring mechanism has to be outcome oriented framework. And maybe some examples can be given which will highlight how this outcome monitoring framework can be put in place for monetization of such kind of asset. And maybe we can also demonstrate some of the case study, some of the good examples, and that also becomes a good repository where we can borrow something from them. The last point is there are some asset specific challenges. Challenges are not uniform across all the assets. For example, some of the challenges, for example, I would say a low level of capacity utilization in gas and petroleum. This is different. There is a regulated tariff in power sector, which may not be there in other sectors. Similarly, low interest among the investors in national highways, which are less than 4 lakhs. So there could be a sector-specific challenge. I think we should also mention about this, because then only we'll be able to put this digitalization in proper state. And accordingly, it will also give some kind of a learning for other stakeholders who will be responsible for this. So my thinking will be, let us try to highlight what is the digital infrastructure we have got, what are the technological intervention like digital twin, and maybe small caselets, small examples which can demonstrate power of this. Similarly, emphasis on capacity building and some strong reference to monitoring mechanism. I think that will really enhance value of this particular report. I must congratulate you and the entire C-DEP team for coming out with a very, very thematic and highly relevant topic. And we must go ahead with that, because we are an aspirational economy. The targets which have been set, whether it is reduction of the logistic cost from 14% to 9%, having a 5 trillion economy, or employment generation of a different magnitude. So all these targets cannot be met unless we also look at this aspect in a holistic and in a systemic manner. So my session will be, let us try to put all pieces together. We have got a wealth of information. I would say this was a gold mining session, and we must put all these practices together and just try to borrow what is common across them, as well as what are the points of distinction, which will also set our path very clear and in a long-term manner. So once again, thanks a lot for giving this opportunity, and let us learn from this.
Thank you, Professor Deshmukh. It's really very insightful, and I think the 4 issues that you mentioned about digital twins, caselets, capacity building, and monitoring mechanisms, I think those are all very, very important. And thank you for appreciating our effort. That's really good to hear. We have almost come to the end of the time that we had allocated, but we have got a representative from Microsoft. Perhaps you would have some views that you would like to share.
Thanks, C-DEP for the opportunity, and thanks to the English members. I think the report is quite detailed in terms of trying to capture all the consensus from all the ministries. Just a few pointers I was trying to make note of. One is, as Sir mentioned, life cycle of an asset. Every asset needs to have a life cycle, defined ownership, in whose hands it's lying. There can be end of life, it can die, or it can still come back to the government. So something on those lines can be categorized. Second is the categorization of an asset. Like today, for majorly organizations, the customer becomes the asset, owning the customer details. That's what is very key and important in the coming times, and that's what every organization would like to kind of own it, and that's the fight going on also. And finding the right partner. Like for something in railways, it can be a different partner. Like I was associated with the toll collection, started in 2010 with Mr. Nandan Nelekani being the chairperson for that, to do that. And I think in 2021 it got launched. Long way, started with the technology companies to look at, and ended up with the banking systems. That the actual owner has to be the banking system and not the technology company. A few insights. Secondly, I think the railways try to monetize the data from IRCTC perspective. 6,38,000 users, which was challenged by the community, and the same had to be withdrawn after a lot of protests. So we need to see from our perspective, and kind of that's the going forward.
Thank you so much. I think those are very important points, and the fact that the customer data itself is an asset, and that asset gets built up over the 30-year, 50-year period, and is the airport getting it back, or the roads getting it back, becomes an important point, very, very critical. Thank you so much. Thanks. So since we have completely run out of time, in fact we're 30 minutes over time, what we can do is, if there's any further insights and views or statements that you would like to share, we can quickly go around the table and have your views, and then we can close the session with your permission. So if that's fine, could we start from here? Mr. Satya Kumar, we can start with you if you have any views, and if you want to pass,
I think one good thing is consolidation of the case studies across different sectors. I think this is something which is invaluable. Here I could find the entire transport sector fully represented, as well as Ministry of Commerce and the Ministry of Urban Development. I think that would be a great starting point, because a lot of people have done a lot of work within the respective departments. And also, I would in fact encourage you to, if you can get Vizag also onto the platform, that will actually tell us as to in which direction we are currently in terms of integrating across various departments.
Thank you. Manish?
First of all, I would like to thank all the panelists for very valuable insights on some of the topics and very diverse viewpoints. On the report, I think it is very detailed, and it has some very good point solutions across the life cycle of an asset, right from conceptualization, creation, and it talks about how digital, how IT, how technology can be used. Mostly it is point-based solutions across. It does say that ERP is one of the solutions, but as Subha Raidu sir suggested, even in ERP implementation, some of the functionalities that are there may not be very easily usable, and though they would like to use it from asset monetization perspective. I think the concepts that have been given in the report of the digital twin, the digital thread, etc., needs to be the concept needs to be elaborated more on how a solution can be built up, and maybe that's one of the thoughts for the technology companies on how a comprehensive solution can be built up around asset monetization. Because after all, life cycle of an asset has been 20, 30, 40 years. How do we have solutions which can stay this much the test of time? Thank you.
True. Very important. Over to you, Mr. Singh.
Only one point, basically for Sanjeev ji. Sir, you mentioned three important words. One was monitoring, the other was OMF, the other was SDG 9 and 11. Interestingly, we have taken some effort, which has taken us 3 years. What we have done is that 8,000 projects which we are being done in the Smart City Mission, we developed a framework and we are trying to monitor the outcomes of these projects. And since we are lucky to have a very diverse range of projects, from education to social to all kinds of projects, so therefore our coverage of outcomes is good. Since they are the coverage of outcomes are good, we also map them to all the 17 SDGs. And I'm glad to inform that the Smart City Mission projects are strongly linked to 14 out of 17 SDGs. We have done this, and we will be publishing a report on what is the exact quantification of outcomes on the 27th of September, where we are having our award ceremony in the presided by the President of India, and I'll be very, very happy to share that report with you. I'm sure we can take it further, sir.
That would be very nice, absolutely. Thank you so much.
So I am thankful to C-DEP and the organizers, and this was really an eye-opener because I could understand various other dimensions which I was not aware of. So I am really grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Natarajan.
Yes, I think I'll echo what Roy ji has said, and I think if I may be speaking for you, Dr. Bhattacharya, that I think there's a lot of inputs here that I'm sure will go into the report. I think we'll just talk with that. Just one thing which came up when Subbaraju sir was mentioning about the Act. Now, I don't know whether it would be in the remit of the report, but does it even look required to look at some of these acts to be created for the future? I mean, I'll give an example that the Postal Act of 1894 is now getting, I think it was recently proposed to change it. So then there's going to be modifications to that by which the post offices would start giving government services also. So just on that, leaving the thought whether some level of changes should be made so that it is future proof, so that 20, 50 years down the line, we should not face the problem that that the Department of Telecom is facing in terms of how to value an asset or things like that. Could be something, or bringing about the challenges of center-state partnership. So something to that effect if these acts, because 50 years down the line we may not be here, but somebody will be doing this set of activities. So I hope that some kind of a governance can be built into this.
I think very important one. Regulatory structures are extremely important. Thank you. Thanks. Vikas?
No, nothing at the moment. No, thank you very much.
Yeah, just one comment. I would like to amplify the message that Professor Viksheshwara and my friend from Microsoft made. More and more as we move towards digital economy, data is going to be there, data is going to be gold. For example, even in roads, today all the data sits with either NPCI or IHMCL. The sooner we are able to start a process where data from different ministry departments start talking with each other, or if there need to be one single body which should manage it, easier will be the transformation. For example, GST data sits separately today, NPCI sits separately. Both need to talk to get those, to create that innovation-based platform or transaction-based platform. That's it. Thank you.
Very important. Mr. Singh?
Thank you, C-DEP team, for giving me this opportunity today. And so one thing which I take away from this is that, like you pointed out, that we should look into the PPP model rather than go for outright sale. So yeah, that thing came up earlier also. So I think I'll pass it on to the higher ups and we'll wait for 6 months or so if outright sale is not the way forward. Rest assured, the importance of asset monetization is again reiterated by the fact that if we are able to do what we are trying to do in our department, BSNL, MTNL can be revived to their full extent, and they won't be anymore any sick corporation as we are presently feeling. So no doubt it is a very important process which we need to go through.
And they can still be sold after being revived with a greater return to the taxpayer.
Yeah, why sell it then? It's good to have a government role also.
Absolutely, because we don't have enough telecom companies. We have only 1.5 or 2.5 companies.
Always good to have more and more competitors in the market.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Mr.
First of all, thanks from my bottom of heart to the C-DEP and all the participants and valuable insights. So one thing, as you said rightly, the assets, this mistake we have done earlier, because is going to PPP 2013. We have announced once after Delhi Mumbai in 2006. We have taken up in 2013. Chennai, Guwahati, Ahmedabad, Jaipur, PPP bids have been announced. From that time onwards, whatever reasons, it has not taken up. So development has been stopped. Our engineers or anybody, since we are already doing PPP, why to expand? So the asset quality reduces and value will come down. The assets will go in Ahmedabad, of course, I can say it was not taken care because of the idea that it will go for PPP, but it happened after 6 years. So till that time asset quality has gone down. So that we should not do mistake. As a public organization, we should continue to invest in value of assets and we should not neglect it, because unless it is well maintained, nobody will take. The private sector will never take whether you have put 100 rupees or not. It is worth of value. So quality of asset, and it should be performing asset. In fact, we are now putting more effort. Next 25 airports have been identified by National Monetization Pipeline. We are continuously developing the assets. That because demand is continuously to grow. So we should not think back that since it is going for PPP, we should not. No. That I think we should not do any mistake there.
I think that's a critical insight.
That's,
if the assets degrade, then
so not only the demand will be failing at the time of tendering, the quality of assets will be seen by the bidders. So valuation will come down there. So 1,000 crores if we invest, that 1,000 will come back to us. We should never think back. We should put the money. Capex should be done. Maintenance of the assets should be maintained to the top standard. But we want to match it to world standard before going for PPP. The value for money. So that mistake should not be done by PSUs.
Absolutely.
That is one landing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor.
Grateful for the opportunity. Personally, a lot of learnings also. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Professor Deshmukh.
This NMP, National Monetization Pipeline, is a medium-term roadmap, and the time frame which has been visualized is 22 to 25. So what happens after that? So I think some passing remarks we can add, because this is to be visualized from the long-term point of view. See, whatever issues we are talking today, they are not just up to 2025 or 2026. But then what happens to that? Maybe a bigger roadmap can be visualized.
Sure. From my perspective.
For Dr. Deshmukh, the launch of only fruits.
Excellent case study. I just was trying to read. So something similar we can look at, kind of creating something like virtual railways or a virtual. In case of an integration, we are looking at multiple ministries. Something we can try doing and considering that.
Thank you. I'll also move to Ruben Banerjee. He was architecting the report itself. If you got any thoughts on
It's very useful. So I've been thinking now so much of valued feedback, we'll have to make best use of them. So we'll try our best, and hopefully you will be. We take all the suggestions and feedbacks on board. We'll try and see that the report is not as boring or seems as dense. No, that's absolutely fine. That is what we.
That's a very valid one.
Yeah, so we'll try and see that, and we'll try to add value. So thanks everyone, and great feedback. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Ruben. Dr. Mitra, any last views?
No, the only except that I have become so much richer by an intellectual asset during the last 3 months, 3 hours. So I was just thinking, how do I monetize it? And another observation, this is with respect to Shiva. He was talking about act and regulator. He seemed to be very fond of government. I'll give an example that how the act boomerangs back to you. I was handling enemy property, which is a very cogent subject. We have enormous properties called enemy properties. lots of litigation used to be there. So we brought out an act and defined enemy property as if the owners happen to have elected not to be the citizens of India, that will qualify, his property will qualify to be enemy property. Right, so the act came into being, so we brokers were so happy, now we have an act. The same happiness he is looking for. And after 6 months, we were inundated with a host of representation from the so-called legal heirs that my forefathers happen to have not elected for the citizen of India, but I have. So the ownership should transfer to me. So under the act, it cannot call to be the enemy property. So the act sometimes also boomerang back, and the regulations also boomerang back. So that's all. Thank you very much, because I'm in the course of pursuing with you. I must have bothered a lot to many of you by emails and phones. And thanks for tolerating us. Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone. That brings us to the close of today's discussions. We're extremely grateful from C-DEP that you could take out your time and share these very, very valuable insights. And we'll continue to come back to you. We need more guidance and more insights, and the cases and caselets that were advised by various people, including Professor Vigneshwaram. I think it's an important input that we will add to the report that we are building. I'll also take this opportunity to thank my colleagues, Dr. Mitra, who has been anchoring this initiative, Mr. Ruben Banerjee, who has been putting the report together, and we've got Urvashi Kaul, who has been doing the hard work of exercising her fingers to put the report onto digital format, Akanksha for helping in the coordination, Pooja for working on all the accounting and paperwork behind this workshop, Pankaj and Rajat, who have been doing the digital work of putting this entire exercise and discussions onto social media for a greater outreach. So I would like to thank them all for their inputs. With that, I'll request Urvashi to do the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Jayaji. I would like to thank all the distinguished panelists for sparing time from your busy schedules. We are enormously enlightened by your insights, valuable insights. I would request Dr. Jayajit to present a small token of appreciation. I would request Akanksha to please help Jayajit,
Sure, what I'll do is I'll come down to your chair so it will be more efficient from a time perspective.
We are thankful for that to you.
Yes, thank you.
So, Dr. Deshmukh, thank you so much.
Dr. Deshmukh.
Does anybody want to do
Rajat, please.
Otherwise, everybody come after me.
Dr. Sanjeev Deshmukh. Dr. P. Vigneshwara. Shri N.B. Suberado. I'm sorry if I got the name wrong. Shri P.S. Pada. Shri Anurag Vijay.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Vikas. Please.
Master of the ceremony, how can you say no?
Akanksha, you'll have to come through.
Is the technology failing?
Slowing down.
How can technology fail to serve?
Shri Shivakumara Natarajan.
Good to meet you again.
Thank you so much.
Shri P.K. Roy. Mr. Vikas Chandra. Shri GVL Satyakumar. Shri Manish Chadha. Thank you, Jayajit. I would request all of you to please join us for lunch. Thank you.
Ready?